Hello.
Hello, sir. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, sir. So, one moment, sir. We'll be starting. Yeah,
Sure.
Ravi, I have sent you the co-host request. If you received, you can. Yeah. So, Velumani, sir. In the meantime, I request like you must have seen the recent report. So, if you have any views on that, or in if you want to not comment on that, any views in particular, we can take. So, over to you, sir, and welcome,
Voice
Aditya.
voice is breaking. Maybe I have challenge. I will relocate myself. Okay.
Sir, we are able to hear you properly.
I'll go to some other location. Signal is weak. Is that okay?
Sir, your voice is fine. Aditya, sir, can you
But I
please
am hearing
confirm?
yours is breaking.
Hi, Dr. Velumani, Aditya Khemka here. We can hear you really fine. Can you hear
Good.
me okay?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
So I think Prince, your voice is breaking partially for us. So maybe some problem with your connection.
Right, sir. So, sir, in the meantime, I request you can manage if my voice is not fine. Velumani, sir, if you can hear me, we can start with you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, Dr. Velumani, I think the question Prince wanted to ask was, Credit Suisse recently came up with a report on diagnostics, and
Yes.
essentially the summary of the report was that they don't see, the kind of growth that the industry has seen in the past. They see challenges to the industry. They see challenges in terms of profitability driven by lower pricing players coming into the market. They see challenges in terms of market share for the current incumbents, both brick and mortar and online incumbents. So, any views you want to share, any inputs you want to share with us on that side?
It's a bit very long report. They have taken too many parameters inside to consider. Also, they have taken a long term view, and I am just wondering how diagnostics was all gaga for 5 years till COVID came in. And then again on COVID, it goes to the peak where it is unbelievably priced. Who did it? Why did they do it? Now, I don't know what suddenly has gone wrong in the minds of the investors. Yes, there was a COVID related uh, increased revenues, but did the investor community expect that raised one will remains raised one for even 5-10 years? It was all very clear that within 6 months period to 1 year period, the COVID will vanish. And once the COVID vanish, that extra revenue on the COVID has to be wiped out. That is what exactly has happened in these last 8-9 months. If the current price of diagnostic scripts are low, and if it is because of the collapse of the startup community based businesses which were 40-50% they lost in their market cap in these last 6 months, 1 year, or if it is because of the Ukrainian war, or is it because of the repo rates revisions across the globe, all these things should not make diagnostics to look very very. I'm very sad to see all the scripts are struggling even to remain where they are. In my personal opinion, अभी जब भी पीछा पड़ता है तो बेहिसाब पीछा पड़ता है, और बुरा बोलना है तो बेहिसाब बुरा बोलता है. This is unfair in the investor community. Why to take it so high and why to drop it so low? I think the overall report I am yet to go through point by point, But overall, I see what they are indicating a price after 3 years, 5 years is something which is, if you want me to use a word, it is highly insulting. Yes, there will be ups and downs. The market dynamics are not so easy to predict, like what you call manufacturing businesses. The services industry, especially healthcare services industry, will have some ups and downs, but I am not able to understand how all of them are today trading minus 60% of their all-time high. And if that comes back in an year or two, it's perfectly all right. But if it doesn't come back even for a couple of years, it's going to be a very big negative view in according to me. I have been inside that business. Ever since I got listed, first mistake all investors did was they oversubscribed it for 75 times. And then the next thing what happens, it gets an upside of some 40% on the day of listing. And it gets listed at $500 million, 3,600 crore. And subsequently, the company has been growing, if not 25%, 17%, 18%. But for 5 years, the stock did not move up at all until COVID came. Now, that time it was my stock which was not moving up. Both other two listed stocks went up like anything. I felt bad. Something is wrong with my stock. And then that gave me frustration, though the numbers weren't anything totally disappointing. So, why did people give me at listing at that high price? That was their mistake. Had I not got that 40% increased rate at listing, I would have had a very fair, smooth journey without any hard burns. So, what is happening is frustrating the promoters by sometimes overbuying and sometimes just doing throw it all. I personally feel this diagnostic market, overall healthcare, but in overall healthcare, the non-diagnostic segment seems to have not that much of a disruption. But the diagnostic companies, why only three? Five of them, all are from their all-time high, anything around 50 to 60% low. Was that all-time high right? Who made money? How did they manage to pull it up? This and all is very, very difficult for me to analyze because I've been approaching from a promoter side, entrepreneur side. I have seen a lot of figures showing how things will be, where values will be eroding. I think there is too much again a hype on the introduction of this very low rate by couple of news e pharmacy companies, and that is not a sustainable disruption. And if at all that disruption is sustained, it will take 5-6 years of fight. It is not that one advertisement happening in first page of a newspaper completely collapses an industry. I don't know if investors have overreacted after seeing this advertisement. It is too much. Overreaction is all right. I mean, reaction is all right. Overreaction has completely made it as if Nabi Pura legacy companies Gaya or Naya I mean, disruption आ गए हैं. When I came into picture 25 years back, I did disrupt. But I did not collapse any of my competitor. All of them had challenges. Many of them did not grow subsequently. But I think the major competitors whom I faced, they were in fact growing faster than me. So, which means I don't think in this market some strategy can completely deprive the established organized players anything. Yes, existing organized players had a comfort zone. I put it this way: they had pricing comfort, and those days technologies were not available in nooks and corners of the country, so they could decide a rate and they could stick to that. And then came into picture and I questioned their pricing, but I questioned their pricing not in the B2C segment. I questioned only in the B2B segment. B2B segment, I did do a disruption. But the thyroid or the lipid profile or the vitamin D continue to have their price of their liking for all my competitors, the mid-sized, large-sized, everybody. In fact, in that segment, there was no true stress. Stress was for growth. Stress was not for profitability. But yes, a couple of months back, there are newspaper advertisements which shows thyroid is available for 199, lipid profile 199, vitamin D also. Yes, these are all very, very distracting, confusing strategies. The sample reaching to the laboratory is more tedious than testing the sample, which I only demonstrated. Then once I demonstrated, the total cost remains still high, so my competitors did not truly bother about it. I shared the sample collection and getting the sample to my door by sharing them a good margin, and they did give a tough fight for all the conventional players. But that was the days of 25 years of B2B focus of mine, and I had a I would call as a tough time in spite of the lowest price to have a growth, but I did grow. Now, on in these last 2 3 months or last 2 3 quarters, the focus is on directly giving to the customer. Now, what price the new age companies are declaring on the newspaper is the price of testing. It is not the price of collection, what we call as collection, logistics, and transportation, consumables. These are all not truly counted there. But a company like a Tata or a Reliance can afford to absorb a couple of thousands of crores to get the attention of the market, and that is not anything surprising and shocking. But it is not that 1 quarter, 2 quarter prices will completely be changed and the existing players will never come back to their profitabilities which they used to have. They will rework on it, readjust on it. What profit Velumani or Thyrocare made was by running the machine for 20 hours in a day. What the competitors' business model is, because they had a high pricing comfort, they did not bother about machines' efficiencies and productivity. They still had a better number than I expected. But going forward, if you don't have an option for pricing, you need to work on the floor efficiency and make sure the samples, you don't put up laboratory every nook and corner. Every test does not need same day reporting. Lot of comforts are there in 80% of the test to report even next day or the third day, which I did. But having said that, whenever there is something new comes, everybody becomes panicked, and the promoters might be panicked and looking at their narrations in week earning calls. Even the investors must be thinking, oh, confidence chala gaya, so it is now a very different world. Let me be very honest with you. Just couple of months, just 3 months back or 6 months back, I did a deal. My shares were sold at 600 or 650 rupees per share. Some broking house, some analyst reported this 600 rate of Thyrocare will be, target price is 320. That looking at that, I understood this is nothing but somebody's in a game to play some things with the stock. But the same man must have seen within another 6 months' time, I exited at 1300. सो ये सब एनालिस्ट होते हैं, वो अपना धुन से अपना मार्केट को अपना दृष्टि से देखते हैं. There are some facts, we can talk about those facts. But if someone says bhoot aaya, I don't believe that bhoot suddenly nahi aayega. Sorry for taking a bit longer time. I thought I will get the context in place.
No, that's really helpful, sir. Thank you for the response. So let's talk about facts then. So the fact is that while we have seen, so I agree with you that during the COVID times, while COVID revenues were there, I think investors acted a bit irrationally in terms of, increasing the share prices to a level where even the COVID revenues were getting a perennial multiple, which was never going to be the case. But let's look at the non-COVID business as it recovers from the trough of the COVID period. Even today, Thyrocare's revenue, 3 years, so 2019 Thyrocare revenue and 2022 non-COVID business revenue of Thyrocare is broadly similar. Zero growth in 3 years essentially on the non-COVID side. So that's another data point that many investors and many industry peers have highlighted and said that look, there is an impact on the industry. There is attrition in volume. There is loss of business, and that is why these companies are probably not worth as much as we thought they were.
No, I get your point, and I also sense there are a few factors are working. None of them are I would call as very serious ones, but all of them are equally serious ones. One thing is the COVID has made many to have more faith in healthcare than any other business vertical, because डर गए लोग, पैसा लेके बिजनेस करने वाला भी मोटिवेट हो गया, और आम आदमी भी हेल्थ केयर में ज्यादा ध्यान देने लगा. नंबर वन. Number two, number of PCR laboratories during the peak number two proliferated so many. It is something which is 200x unutilized capacity as on today on the COVID. Every hospital went ahead and created a facility and took ICMR permission, thinking that सभी लोग पैसा बनाता है, इसमें हम भी पैसा बनाएंगे. So what is the
Dr. Velumani, we lost your voice. Maybe it's your
ask me?
connection.
Hello?
Yeah, sir, we lost you for 30 seconds. So if you could repeat
Yeah.
yourself
So
for the last 30
what
seconds.
has happened? Too many people for doing COVID, they came in. COVID business vanished, and they attacked non-COVID because they have facility, they have room, they have HR, they have invested. And meanwhile, Velumani has exited, and Velumani had a highest number of multiple, and everybody has diagnostic highest multiple. Mind you, all private equity guys became very active, went and invested 1 million to 10 million in not less than 100 players across the country. Now, all these things might block the growth. What otherwise the organized players were enjoying something like a 12% to 15%, depending upon the brand, they might become 4% to even 6% growth, because this kind of competition has come in. But why should it be degrowing? There is no degrowth. But I understand from the analyst point of view, the valuation is growth multiplied by profits. Now, what was a growth was, let's say, 15%. They always calculate for year 2, year 3, and then give an advanced multiple. Now, all of them have got corrected. According to me, it got corrected even 5 months back. Now, why it has not gone up is a big. I myself need to find out. But having said that, the arrival of new players, arrival of new money into diagnostics, and enthusiasm of lot of players to see why can't we do a lean diagnostics business which doesn't have any capex barriers. There are too many in the field. So, if you ask me, there are challenges, but I don't think the picture created in this report is uh, fair and normal. It is a little trying to create a panic for the players.
Understood, sir. Makes a lot of sense. Um, Also, sir, because you are still, a shareholder in API, you got certain shares, I think, when the transaction happened. Uh, does that bother you that all the shares of Thyrocare that are held by API or through its subsidiary are actually pledged? And any discussions you have had with the management of the API team as to why that kind of pledge has been done? Because again, as investors, to us that's a risk, because if there's a margin call on those shares will be sold by the organization to which it is pledged.
No, one thing is my investment in that API was done the very same day or even the day before I made the transaction. So it's not anything suddenly happened. And it is not that my other four players in the industry have done any kind of such kind of mortgaging and raising money, but all the shares have come down, prices have come down. So if you ask me, share price of Thyrocare coming down would make two major challenges for the parent company. One is they have to continue to augment the security side or borrow and pay half of the money back because the value have eroded. Normally, a debt is given half of the market price. So that pain will be there, is there. That much I can sense and understand. The second point is their own business itself is supposed to have come to a IPO. It hasn't come, and not that market is favorable, and they have delayed, and they have finally announced there won't be an IPO right now. And that challenge is another challenge for that company to leverage Thyrocare, and Thyrocare's volume, value, profit, all will help pharmacy to produce a better IPO. But then that all getting delayed. I don't keep discussing on this, and even if a few things I discuss, it won't be nice to talk in public. But nothing we need to hide that there are two challenges. Challenges is the debt burden of the promoters on acquiring Thyrocare. The another one is lack of substantial profit and growth and value for them to leverage their pharmacy IPO. These two things are there. But the issue is not with Thyrocare, the issue is with the entire diagnostic industry. So we are today talking about diagnostic industry. Is that the industry has lost its sheen? Is that the business models currently are all replicated and all of them are troubling the profitability for the bigger organized players? That is the question for us to discuss in this issue. But let me again tell this, I have told in many forum. Guys who have 5 crore turnover have 2 crores EBITDA. I am repeating. The small guys who have 5 crore turnover have 2 crores EBITDA. The guys who have more than 1,000 crore or more than 500 crore turnover have also a 40%, 25, 20%, 25%, or even sometimes 35, 40% EBITDA. The bulk of the guys between 5 crore and 500 crore, look at their balance sheet, it is not worth looking at. except very few. So, what does it mean? Scale is good. Scale is true business. But without scale, you make a lot of money in the diagnostic laboratory business. That is why in the country, 5,000 odd, 10,000 uh, players with a pathologist specifically with a 5 crore turnover did not go anywhere scaling, because the scaling has its own pain till you achieve that scaling. While scaling happen, while the process of scaling happens, it is the biggest pain. Let me tell you very clearly, the born child is the pleasure, not the delivery process. So the delivery process and scaling, the way in which you have to invest to go city to city in enhancing IT, logistics, HR, everything is intimidating. So lucky are those who were there present before the disruptions came. That were the only four: Thyrocare, SRL, Metropolis, and LOL, because they have delivered already a baby, and that baby was beautiful. I'm just giving some analogy in a layman language, but you need to understand, all the money, all the money given by private equities in these last 10 years is only burning. They are not growing.
I
Growing,
completely agree. Yeah.
burning, growing, but are not profitable.
So true. So true. So one last question specific to healthcare, and then I'll move on to the diagnostic industry. How do you rate the new CEO Rahul Guha? So he's talking about doubling the business in 3 years, which implies, sort of 26-27% annual CAGR in top line. He's saying three pillars of growth. He's talking about new pin codes being one pillar, the second pillar being the incremental the incremental revenues that will come from the pharmacy platform. And the third pillar that he mentioned was higher volumes effectively from the same customer. Can you sort of talk about of your impression of the new CEO and his strategy, and would you have done anything different if you were in his shoes?
If I would have done anything in his shoes, I would have not left Thyrocare also. The game became tough, and the game became difficult to, walk the talk. Maybe both बक बक किया था, ये होएगा वो होएगा. The big challenge there is the market is so complicated, and you may have a comfortable market in Bangalore, not in Calcutta, maybe in Nagpur, not in Indore. So multiple markets, multiple challenges, multiple local competitors. In some places, the local man makes sure that the outsider is closed. In some places, outsider is aggressive and local is closed. So a lot of things happen. Having said that, any man comes inside and it's a company which is totally grown organic, and first time the company sees somebody at that position, at a very high position, inorganic. So it will take time for him to, understand and digest what are all the challenges and situations which would need a lot of changes. Overall, I say he probably saddled with the share price issues of the entire industry, number one. Number two, COVID band ho gaya. Non-COVID is not growing as big as every player wanted. So he must be under a tremendous, to begin with itself, उसको challenges तो जरूर रहेगा. I've not personally interacted with him, but a couple of people who are in the organization, who have been my children for decades, they have been telling, sir, he is good, he is understanding. We are all working towards revamping uh, a few things which did not work, and few things are working, but it will take time. I don't think I should talk about him at this point of time in a public forum, anything beyond that.
That's very helpful, sir. So coming on back to the industry itself. So there was a session done by Professor Avinash Ghalke, and he was of the opinion that whilst the new discounting players may not really eat away the market share from the incumbents, but they will put pressure on the companies in the sense that the incumbents may not be able to take price increases the way they were taking. I know Thyrocare never took price increases meaningfully, but I know for a fact that Dr. Lal, SRL, Metropolis, they have taken annual price increases anywhere ranging from 3 to 5% each year over the past. Would you agree with the assessment that the entry of the new discounted players would at least restrict the incumbents from increasing prices, if not cutting prices?
No, one thing is this market is such a heterogeneous market. It is like Arab Sagar, कहीं बरसात गिर रहा है तो कहीं बादल बागर जा रहा है. So it is something like somebody reduces the price in one particular one particular vertical or kind of player, that will not. ये तो समुद्र है, इसमें ज्यादा कुछ impact जल्दी नहीं पड़ने वाला है. And the price raising when is done, it is a very, as I said, it's a complicated market. With the unorganized players, it is 90% B2C. They are only dealing directly with customers. With organized players, the B2B business is for Thyrocare around 70%. And for all major players, it will be between 70% and 50%. So what pricing you change for a common man, what price you change for a B2B customer also varies from company to company, and also from for the same company 1 year to another year. One day they will feel without franchisee, without middleman, business nahi grow aayega, let us pamper them. After 1 year, the numbers are not doing well. Array, these people are becoming a middleman, making lot of money, not growing, and then go ahead and reduce increase the rate for them. So if you look at it, the B2C pricing, there is no yardstick. As even this report is very clearly telling, it is ranging for a test anywhere from 200 rupees to 1000 rupees. इतना डिफरेंस मार्केट में है, उसका मतलब मार्केट प्राइस इज नॉट एट ऑल एनी वे easily comprehensible for the common man also. I will have a small break and come in 5 minutes. Please go ahead and discuss.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. You can put yourself on mute, sir, for the
Yeah.
5 minutes. Over to you, Prince.
Thanks. Sajal sir,
Yeah, hi Prince. Hi.
hi,
Hi,
sir.
hi everyone.
Yes, sir. So, sir, you wanted to discuss one example. So, shall we wait for 5 minutes for that, or
Yeah, let's wait for Dr. Velumani to come back. I would like to listen to him as well. And apologies, I missed the initial 20-25 minutes of this session. So, but I'll catch up on the recording. I can see that this session is being recorded.
right, sir? Even we can request Aditya, sir. He can touch upon what we discussed, and he also can share his views on the report if he have any. Yeah, Aditya, sir.
Sure, I will share some inputs. So I won't specifically comment on the report, but I would actually point out to my own house's report that the INCRED PMS, we release a monthly bulletin called the Wealth Care. So, in that monthly bulletin, there was one bulletin, I think, for the month of August, I think, or no, not August, maybe July, when we spoke about the diagnostic sector. Our house view and, my research essentially indicates that the pricing differential, as Dr. Velumani was saying, is huge. And each micro market, within each micro market, each pin code would have a different pricing from a different set of players. And, it's a very, very micro market. Even within micro markets, it's a very pin code specific pricing dynamic that plays out in the diagnostic space, and therefore, there is no basis of comparisons. Then again, within the diagnostic industry, you have NABL certified labs, you have non-certified labs, then you have labs which are NABL certified but are also JCI certified, which is the which is the American certification. Obviously, the cost of maintaining a JCI certified lab is different from a cost of maintaining only a NABL certified lab and that is very different from the cost of maintaining a uncertified lab. Uh, Now, therefore, depending on what cost structure you are running, you'll have to price accordingly, and you'll have a customer segment to target. See, each of these micro markets would have uber rich people, some middle class people, and some really poor people. Um, everybody needs diagnostics, right? So then each of these lab is essentially targeting a different segment of the consumer, which makes a lot of sense, right? So I don't agree with the rationale that diagnostic is getting disrupted. I don't see any disruption whatsoever on the ground. So I go to the labs that are in my vicinity in Mumbai. I talk to them about their volumes, about the pricing, and I've gotten a few tests done. My daughter recently got dengue. She was in hospital for 4 days. Her platelet counts had really collapsed. Thankfully, now everything is okay. By God's grace, she recovered really well. But I saw the diagnostic test reports, and you can't help. Obviously, you're worried about your daughter, and you're worried about the her recovery. But at the same time, you also see what the diagnostic prices are, and what the services are. Uh, so it's all. I don't see any disruption on the
Yeah,
ground
right. I'm
for
back.
now.
I'm back.
Yes, Dr. Velumani, welcome. So, Prince, if you don't mind, I would like to continue my line of query with Dr. Velumani.
Yeah, yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, go ahead. At 9 o'clock, I will be logging out because I have got to do something else.
Not a problem, sir.
So
Thanks
you
for your
have
time.
time. Yeah.
Thanks for your time, sir. Uh, so, sir, I was talking about the diagnostic industry, and now everybody sort of treats a diagnostic industry as one industry. But in my assessment, there are two industries within diagnostic. There's pathology and radiology. Pathology, obviously, somewhat competitive, somewhat commoditized, somewhat, very, very close to competitive pressures because of multiple players. Um, how would you, is there any difference between the two in your mind in pathology and radiology?
Yeah.
And
I'll
if,
I'll I'll tell you there is not just two industries. I mean, in one industry there are two segments. In one industry there are many segments. Not that everybody understands it. Yes, very clearly the vertical split in the diagnostics is one is radiology, another is the pathology. In pathology, there are three vertical splits. One is pathology itself, another is microbiology, the third one is biochemistry. And in radiology, it is the CT, MRI, and PET CT as one segment, and ultrasound, X-ray, and other tests as a parallel segment. All all the five are very, very different in their as a base. Different kind of capex, different kind of opex, and different kind of EBITDA. If you look at it, let me tell you in terms of pathology, everybody calls Velumani as a pathology player, but he has never done a pathology because we don't do a tissue study using a microscope, which is the core pathology. Now, that pathology is not having size. That pathology is an expertise driven. You can't report in unless otherwise you are an MD pathologist which with a lot of experience, because every tissue is different, and in that each tissue the cancer and non-cancerous are different, and in cancer all cancers don't look similar. So you can't do what you are doing with biochemistry in the pathology side. So Velumani has never done pathology. Thyrocare never did microbiology till IPO. They were very happy doing only biochemistry. Now, pathology is not scalable. Microbiology is not scalable. Biochemistry is only scalable. It is not just scalable, it is idiot proof because it is number game and numbers are automated and barcoded, and a machine server all play a very great role, which is not possible in microbiology and pathology. ये मुझे बहुत जल्दी समझ में आया था, इसलिए मैं बाकी सब किया नहीं है. Now, let me give you one more insight into the biochemistry side of it. Biochemistry also has tests which are very easy to do, and tests which are very not scalable at all. Blood sugar is one test which is very easy to do. For doing this test, you don't even need anything more than a lakh rupees investment. But that is not scalable because every laboratory will have a 1 lakh machine and they will never get the sample done from outside. And if you're only on B2C, you will not get more than 25 samples a day. So is blood sugar, it's a biochemistry, is it scalable? It is not scalable. CBC is a test without which no one starts a laboratory. It is very simple to do, very simple to buy, and in fact, you don't need a machine, you need only a microscope. Again, that is not scalable. So, what is scalable in that segment of biochemistry is hormone tests, vitamin tests. Because to do that, you need a 1 crore worth machine. Everybody doesn't have, so you have to give it outside. So when Velumani started a business, in his menu there was no blood sugar, there was no CBC, there was no microbiology, there was no pathology. It was in fact all in thyroid, only thyroid. I worked only on thyroid, and that was the focus which got a very different line of B2B business. And B2B business can be done only in that segment, which is the costly biochemistry tests. Sorry for giving a very long answer because you only said two segments. I am telling you many segments inside. When it comes to radiology is capex intensive. There is no opex as much as in the pathology side. But in the case of radiology, one big suffering currently, all radiology players who are alone, all players who do radiology and pathology also, they have one problem. The problem is they work only 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours. And if they reduce the price, they have to work in the entire night. So they don't want to reduce the price. And the machines are lying unutilized in the entire night for 95% of the radiology machines. Imagine Indigo and Go Air and Vistara, all of them stop their flights by 8 p.m. and only restart morning 8 a.m. Imagine that industry, whether it will ever have a profit. I've just given you a fair picture of how do you analyze this heterogeneous, complicated products in a simple industry and try to work a strategy for creating a huge balance sheet is a very big challenge. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, that is very helpful. So, sir, one of the players who's big in radiology, Krishna Diagnostics, they have been recently talking about not buying these scanners, but rather, acquiring these scanners on a paper scan model from the vendors. Uh, do you think that takes the capacity utilization variable out of the equation and they can still be profitable using the paper scan module, because that shifts the risk of obsolescence, that shifts the risk of lower capacity utilization, and they can still be profitable? Do you think that's a doable sort of strategy?
Now, I will again draw an analogy. Let us say somebody buys the aircraft and runs it, another man takes lease and runs it, and who will have more profit?
That's true. The man who buys it will have more profit if he is able to utilize it. Yeah.
एग्जैक्टली फंड्स रहेगा तो खरीद के बिजनेस करो, फंड्स नहीं रहेगा तो लीज पे बिजनेस करो. उसमें ज्यादा प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी का कुछ ज्यादा ये नहीं है. प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी इज एफिशिएंसी. प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी इज आई ऑलवेज टेल वन पंच लाइन, a standing machine is a liability and a running machine is an asset. And the player whom you have mentioned, their machines run from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. because in government hospital, the poor man gets a test at a very low cost, will sit at till night 11 o'clock without an AC outside the building and get the test done. That business model is a wonderful business model where the machine MRI or CT gets enough number of cases, but the big pain is there you don't have a pricing comfort, and in the tender you have to quote the lowest. But then having said that, कहीं ना कहीं वॉल्यूम आएगा, कहीं ना कहीं प्रॉफिट आए, मार्जिन आएगा, दोनों ज्यादा नहीं किसी को भी आएगा. This is very clear.
Fair. That's a very fair response. So, how do you see the government now looking at this industry? Because the government tenders that people like Krishna sort of bid for. I have never heard Dr. Lal or a Metropolis or even Thyrocare, when you were in charge. I don't remember ever discussing with you, if you are bidding for government tenders. So why suddenly, has the government sort of changed this, or is it new that government has started giving out the state tenders for the public-private partnership diagnostics, or is it something that has existed for a long time, but just that none of the private players were interested?
See, the big challenge is government had a challenge of having some infrastructure in government institutes which were underutilized. Either they can invest more and get more machines and run it, which they didn't do. And even if they run it, their cost of testing is much higher than they can outsource. So these are all problems of the government. In case of radiology, government did not have big money to invest, or they didn't get approval for that money. So many hospitals or many even governments had first it was only the hospital level. Government level has still not come. Government hospitals had autonomous powers to do the solutions within the framework which they have been doing. That is where the Krishna Diagnostics was leader, and they found out how the hospitals can be convinced that they can get at the lowest cost without investment the test done. A wonderful model, and it has worked, and they are the leaders there. But this works in radiology because radiology needs capex. Pathology doesn't need capex. So when pathology is not the capex, the government business did not come out. But having said that, there are a couple of things which investors may not be aware of. There is a HLL healthcare, which is the conventional condom making company, government company, which is doing business for state governments in at least 7, 8 states. And also, of late, I have understood SRL and the LAL are picking up couple of states. But having said that, this was in a large scale done in the COVID. I still remember in the state Jharkhand, they were asking for quotations, and we also sent quotations. And all my competitors also sent quotations for RT-PCR test for a collected sample. We quoted 400. All my peers have quoted between 400 and 425. That means it makes a lot of sense to pick up 20,000 samples. One fine day, my boys brought 35,000 samples from Jharkhand, from 5 different districts to Mumbai. That too at a time when flights were not truly operational. We had to travel a lot of things. Why I'm saying is, government has understood in COVID the power of tender. And when you have volume, you have power to allow the players to democratically compete. In my personal opinion, biggest disruption, if it comes, it is not in the price by A player against B player. If the disruption comes, it will be the government which will tell, my entire state will guarantee you 300 crores of testing every year. You give me the quotation. Trust me, all diagnostic laboratories will be very happily picking up, because even at that rate, the profits will be very high. When I say so, in diagnostic industry, when volumes are high, costs are low. So this power of volumes will only be government triggering it, and this will happen sooner. So it is all diagnostic players should be prepared to take government business at any cost. Of course, payment takes sometimes 6 months, 1 year. उसके बाद बाबू का घर पे जाओ, बाबू का ऑफिस में जाओ, बाबू को चाय पे ले जाओ, क्या खिलाओ पिलाओ, सब कुछ करना होता है. Otherwise, paisa doesn't come.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Velumani, for your views. Sajal Bhai and Prince, I'm done with my line of questioning. Do you guys have anything for Dr. Velumani?
Yeah, Sajal sir.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, hello, Dr. Velumani.
Hello.
Really nice listening to you. Sorry I joined the session late, but I'll catch up on the recording later. I I have an observation, and I've also got a question for you. So maybe first I'll just bring my own observation. So I've been tracking this diagnostic space for many years because I wanted to make an investment in this sector, but because of my sort of mental block with the valuations, I could never make any investment when Thyrocare was listed around 2016, and some of the other players as well, because I was not comfortable with the valuations, going north of 10 times price to sales, and I've got a big mental block with the valuations. But um, so coming to my observation, I traveled to India earlier this year around July month, and that was after a gap of about 3.5 years. And I thought I'll maybe do some scuttlebutt, and थोड़ा सा खून का बलिदान दूंगा और कुछ डेटा निकल के आएगा शायद, hopefully. So with that objective in mind, I picked two players in the diagnostic space. One was listed entity, and the other one was an unlisted entity, and the entire family. So it was about five of us in total that went through that sort of diagnostic test on different points. So towards the beginning of the period, and then again after 2 weeks. So different companies. One company A was in the beginning of the period, and for all of us, and then company B was towards the end of 2 weeks for all of us. And I went through all the tests that I do here in the UK. So full blood count, and the HbA1c, the blood glucose one, right, and all the vitamins, etc. And to our surprise, and first of all, to my surprise, I mean, the readings that I got from one of the players was rather erratic, because I do these tests sometimes twice a year, so 6 months, 8 months gap, sometimes once every year. But I've been taking these tests quite regularly here in the UK. So the results were surprising for me, but what was more surprising was that the results or the data was erratic for all of us. And it was not erratic for things like the RBC, the WBC, or the platelets. It was erratic for the vitamins. And there was a reasonable degree of certainty in the deviation of the data that we were getting here in the UK, and what the player gave us in India, one of the two players. And the other player was perfectly fine in terms of the data. They were in the reasonable range, and you accept that there will be a reasonable variation between your own blood sample, within a gap of a few weeks or months. So one data was completely erratic, and the other data was fine. And that's the reason I sort of tweeted this, that the cost that you pay is not just the price that you pay for those tests. It's also your own blood, and the integrity of the data. How reliable is the data? I mean, what's the whole point of getting a test for 100, 200 rupees, or maybe 1000 rupees or whatever, if the data itself is fudged?
Right. Your question is too long, and but I have understood what it is.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
also, this question is not for this platform. Some other day, let us have a session. Laboratories do the bluff. Have a session, and we will discuss separately on that. But I will give you an answer to this in a simple way.
Sure.
Blood sugar test, if you do at 7 a.m. and after having lunch at 9 a.m., the double value will be three times high. Now,
Hmm.
this we know because we are consuming food or lunch or sugar, so it is going up. In the body, some hormones are very high early morning, some are very low in the late afternoon. So, this is known as in the same day, a kind of variations which is not explainable. And there are some variations in the same day for the same man in the day and in the evening, that is known as some diurnal variation. And also for a lady who has a menstrual cycle, you do a test on the 4th day of the cycle and the 17th day of the cycle, it will be completely confusing. So is various other parameter in the same individual, it will be varying within the same day or after a couple of weeks or a couple of months. This having said that, sampling time variations, sample of 5 samples I take and I run it in the same machine, one machine, all the 5 will not give me the same value. All the 5 samples I run in my own floor, 5 different machines, the values will not match. Machine to machine variation, day to day variation, sample to sample variation, and then lab to lab variation is another thing. Technology to technology variation is one more thing. Having said that, please don't lose faith on the diagnostic test because I have given you blunt explanation about where and all variations can come from. I think what is known as a normal range is there. A normal range, for example, for a thyroxine T4 test, it varies from 5 to 12. The very fact it varies from 5 to 12 is to take care of all such variations with 95% confidence. That is known as statistically two standard deviation. ये थोड़ा मामला है, इतना आसान नहीं है, और लैब टू लैब कंपेयर करेगा वो सब रिलायबल नहीं आएगा, फिर बड़ा लैब को सही समझकर छोटा लैब को गाली देगा. In entire journey of mine, first 5 years, all were fighting with me, telling that other players have got reputation, brand, तुम्हारा ही गलत होगा. But after me becoming a brand, बाकी सबको बजा डाला, क्योंकि ताइरो के कैसे रॉन्ग होएगा, तुम्हारा ही प्रॉब्लम रहेगा. Trust me, laboratory tests have limited reliability. Having said that, there is always a disclaimer. Don't treat a patient on the values reported. Treat the patient after correlating with the clinical symptoms. I've given you a fair disclaimer, at the same time, honest disclaimer.
Yeah, so just to follow on this one, doctor, I mean, the test, both the companies, the tests were performed early morning, round about 6, half 6, because we wanted the first sample collection to happen at the home. And the HbA1c in early morning, you get the average. It doesn't matter, what you
Okay,
consumed the
let
last night, right?
me tell you here, HbA1c will not have any variation in that individual in a day.
Yes, correct.
So it's very difficult to talk about every test and every lab and look at it. But if you truly wanted to assess a product, I don't think this is the way to assess a product. All CAP accredited laboratories have to have the best quality. Let me be very honestly explain you. If our country has got CAP accredited laboratories, they just can't bluff, because if their values are, we have to do every month 2 cycles of testing and report it blindly. And if our reports is not as expected, they will block you doing the test in the laboratory. Oh, it is not that somebody else's biased analysis. They compare 5,000 member laboratories in that program, all their values, and there is no true value for that sample. The mean of all the 1,000 players is the true value, and if you are an outlier, you are told you are an outlier. Most reliable scientific way of functioning. So I would tell all common man, whether they are investors or otherwise, please look at CAP accreditation or at least enable accreditation. Enable doesn't monitor like CAP. So these two if present, आंख बंद करके उधर टेस्ट कराओ, उससे ज्यादा आप डाउट सबको शक करेगा तो जिंदगी बहुत परेशान हो जाएगी.
No, no, I get that point. The other thing is the way the sample is collected. I mean, that also tells you about the practice, the good practice being followed. So one of the two companies, they collected the sample, they put it in their bag, the normal, jhole wala bag, and they took it away. The other company collected the sample and they put that in the liquid nitrogen.
Let
So
let me
that tells you something.
let yeah, let me tell you, we have evolved a lot. I started the business in 1995. उस जमाना में प्लास्टिक ट्यूब्स नहीं था. ग्लास ट्यूब्स में सैंपल लेके बॉम्बे लोकल में छाती में पॉकेट में रख के लोग आते थे. और वो ग्लास का ऊपर कापूस का ढक्कन, अंदर ब्लड और ऊपर कापूस का ढक्कन. मे बी 1995 96 2 साल में I might have lost so many samples because the glass breaks and the cotton drinks. Trust me, the plastic was introduced then leak-proof vials came in, then subsequently the barcoding came in for identity. So the lot of evolution has happened. पॉकेट में लेके आता था, उसका बाद बॉक्स बनाता क्योंकि टूटना नहीं चाहिए. बॉक्स बनने के बाद आइस बॉक्स में रखने के लिए ऑल अक्रेडिटेशन एजेंसीज वेर टेलिंग, सो उसका अंदर रखता था. और ऐसा भी होता था, बहुत सारे लोग अक्रेडिटेशन होने से 10 दिन पहले वो प्रैक्टिस करता था, उसका बाद नहीं करता था. बट हैविंग सेड दैट, in the year 2022, I will tell around 80% of the laboratories are following what is known as best practice. ये 20 साल पूरा सीख रहा था. There is no other way. Everything has to evolve, and it finally is evolving. Still, there is a 10-20% improvement possible. होना चाहिए. Right. As I said at 9 o'clock, I had to attend to someone. I am extremely sorry if I am moving out today. Anything if people want to learn in diagnostics, be it operational side, be it QC side, be it pricing side, be it even the profitability side, I will be very happy and I will come in when needed. Thank you, Prince, and thank you, Aditya, and thank you, my friend who was worried about giving multiple blood donations to get the quality evaluated. Wish you all a great time. Continue. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
doctor.
sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time. So, Aditya sir, you were telling your opinion in between. So, and sir came in. So, you were. Can you continue from there?
Yeah, I forgot where I was, but thank you, Dr. Velumani, for your kind time. Really helps us investors understand the market and understand how things can change. Um, Now, coming to my opinion, so basically on the ground, I don't see anything changing. There is absolutely zero evidence. So, आपको एक example देता हूँ, Prince. So, Healthians as an online discounting player started operations in 2014-15. ये हमने अपने न्यूज़लेटर में डाला है. वेल्थ केयर का न्यूज़लेटर है जुलाई का, इंक्रेड पीएमएस से, तो हमने डाला है. दे स्टार्टेड ऑपरेशंस इन 2014. उनका 2021 का फाइनेंशियल्स अवेलेबल है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स में, where their top line is 70 crores, 70, and they have a 45 crore loss before tax. Okay, so after 7 or 8 years of entering into discounting diagnostics, and Healthians is a fairly well known player and very fairly backed by PEs and star cricketers. Despite that, they have not been able to establish a scale or profitability anywhere close to sustainable, right? And that makes you think that even if it's Tata or it's Reliance or it's whoever, right? Where do they go with this kind of pricing and the logistic cost and the back end testing cost, and how do they retain the patient? You can get the patient once to try you. How do you retain the patient is a completely different story, right? Um, because if the patient has to get the test done again after getting it done from you, you are not going to retain him. He's not going to come back to you, right? So that all that and it. So Dr. Velumani, in one of his previous spaces said that Thyrocare did disrupt the market with lower pricing, the B2B market, not the B2C. B2C is much harder to disrupt. B2B is relatively easier to disrupt. So he disrupted the B2B market but it took him 20 years to get there, right? The way the stock prices have reacted, the way the multiples have reacted, the way the investing public has reacted, it seems to me that they seem to be saying that the market is already disrupted or will get disrupted in the next 3 to 6 months. So, as an investor, to me, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't correlate with the groundwork that we have done, the research that we have done. It doesn't correlate with that. Um, what I see, so I said, we had this conversation. I think on the con call also, Thyrocare con call also, the new CEO Rahul Guha, he came and said that they're targeting 26-27% CAGR over next 3 years in top line. And the three pillars that he was talking about: 10% from volume, which is essentially market growth; 10% from pin codes by expanding to more parts of India; and 10% from more business from PharmEasy. I think it's a BHAG, what we in management lingo call BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. But if somebody can dream or aspire for 30, if he needs to deliver like 12 to 15%, I think that will positively surprise the street, because the way the multiples today and stock prices today are, it doesn't seem to me that people are expecting even 12 or 15. So so I feel fairly comfortable about investing in diagnostic space today, because I'm an investor. I'll talk the investor language. A business, Dr. Velumani has spoken a lot about it, and we all understand the business to a certain extent. And then coming to radiology, why my line of questioning to Dr. Velumani was radiology, government contracts, Krishna Diagnostics as a player also seemed very, very, interesting story. In 2012, they started operations. 2022, they are already 450 crores, right? 10 years, 450 crores versus Healthian, 7-8 years, 70 crores. And they're profitable, Krishna, at 450 crores. They're a profitable cash flow generating entity. Um, so again, another example of a seemingly boring, low price, low margin business. Capital intensive, yes, because it's primarily radiology, primarily government contracts. So pricing has to be very reasonable. Yes, there is a data cycle with the government. Yes, you have to deal with the government machinery, all that Dr. Velumani spoke of. But look at the scale that they have been able to achieve in 10 years, right? So, and that is government assured, right? And we had this conversation as Incred Asset Management. We had this conversation with Dr. Avinash Ghalke. He's the erstwhile promoter of Avinash Ghalke Laboratories, which is now owned by SRL. In fact, Dr. Avinash Ghalke today, if I'm not mistaken, is chairman of the board of SRL. Um, so we had this conversation with him, and he was saying that while the incumbents may not be able to take price increases the way they have been able to take, he doesn't see that there will be any material volume share loss, right? So if the market grows at 10, 12, the incumbent should be able to grow at 10, 12. Now, the key question then is will the market grow at 10, 12? The answer is yes. The market has grown 15, 16 over the past decade. Dr. Velumani was indicating it may not happen at 15, 16. It may happen at 5, 6. My view is it can happen at 10, 12, not 5, 6. I think 5, 6 is a very, very draconian sort of scenario. And this is, I'm talking non-COVID. Obviously, COVID is not any longer a sustainable business. It never was. I'm purely talking non-COVID businesses. So, so I feel that with the government putting more um, emphasis on healthcare, right? More, and this is why I asked this question to Dr. Velumani as to this government contracts. Is this a new phenomenon? His response essentially was yes, it is new, and the fact is that the government has realized it is easier to outsource than to do it on your own, because you get more efficiency, you get better pricing. So it's a buy versus make decision from the government side, and thankfully, finally, they are moving to the buy decision instead of make decision, and that is helping, the government. So I feel that uh, there is a lot of opportunity in the diagnostic space. And if you look at parallels, right? So look at European diagnostic players, look at American diagnostic players. They have been there for a very, very long time, relatively longer time than Indian diagnostic players. And look at their financials, look at their growth trajectories. It's all the same story, right? And they have also had online players, they have also had discounted players for a very long time. Nothing has changed materially, right? So all of that, our research gives us enormous confidence in the space, and we feel very, very optimistic about it. So that was my view on this. I'm more than happy to take questions. I think Sajal dropped out of or
Sir,
what?
he just text. So Ravi, any question? Yeah, Ravi, you
Rick,
can ask. Yeah.
actually, I've shared few questions to you. I might be traveling now, so I've WhatsApp you a few of the question, but I'll ask you if I can to Aditya. Aditya, like for diagnostic, earlier we used to call like distribution, brand, uh, whatever customer stickiness the incumbent has built, that's the reason for driving a premium multiple and the growth visibility. But is it because of this new age player, then to look at beyond looking at these factors and to look at something like who has a stronger balance sheet to run the company for next 5 years and not make profit and just for target for market share. So how you see these changes, uh, as the report was also about disruption, what sense you make out of it, and not only on the urban markets, because lots of like growth and multiple which we assign for incumbent player is for the penetration in the semi-urban and the rural market where they have to make the reach, where they think the thought that the appeal from their and the cash flow from the urban pockets will be deployed and they can grow very fast in semi-urban markets. And will that get disrupted because of these new age players? Any thought on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think diagnostic remains a branded play. You have to understand this, and my data point is about 7, 8 years old, but I'll still give you the data point. Um, so 70 to 80% of diagnostic tests in India are referred by doctors, as in it's a doctor referred business, right? So, and the doctor is going to refer the lab on which he has relied. So you have to understand something. Doctors are always vulnerable to litigation, right? India में तो litigation के साथ साथ मार भी पड़ती है. But if the doctor mistreats a patient, basis a diagnostic report which is unreliable. Sajal Bhai was saying that one of the labs gave him a very unreliable report and the other gave him a very reliable report. So if you treat a patient basis an unreliable report just because the report was cheap and the patient chose that lab, and something happens to the patient, it is the doctor's liability. Okay, उसको relatives घुस के मार देंगे वो तो अलग बात है, लेकिन if they sue him, he will be penalized, his license will be cancelled, and his livelihood will be gone. Um, So no doctor ever, I have never met a doctor who will take risk with a diagnostic report. He might look at your report. If he sees the numbers are amiss, he will tell you that go and get it done from my trusted laboratory. If you have already got it done from a laboratory he trusts, well and good. If you have not gotten it done from a laboratory he trusts, then he will ask you to go and get it done from a laboratory he trusts. And then he will treat you, because then he knows that the numbers are accurate. The other report, he doesn't know whether it is accurate or not, and he will not take a risk with it because it's too big a risk for him. It's not your well-being or your health on that day is not worth that risk on his lifelong journey as a doctor, right? So he's not going to take that risk for you or for anybody for that matter. So 70 to 80% business is doctor referred. The 20-30% which is not doctor referred is this annual health checkups that we talk about, right? Which is another focus area, which is where thyrocare is also very big, and nowadays Dr. Lal has also become fairly sizable in that business, where the patient voluntarily goes to a lab, gets his report, right? Annual health checkup done, gets like 70 tests, 80 tests, whatever done on his blood samples. And then he sort of sees the tests and then he says, okay, everything is within range, so he's okay. Now, let's say there are two patients, right? Patient A and patient B. Let's say the patient A goes, gets the 80 tests done, all 80 tests are within the range of the appropriate range that the report says. So then he's okay and he doesn't go to a doctor. He says, okay, my health is fine, I don't need to worry. Now let's say patient B, out of the 80 parameters, let's say 3 parameters are out of the range, right? Now he needs to go to see a doctor. And then again the same cycle. So the doctor will see the entire annual health checkup report. He will see which lab published the report. If he trusts the lab, he will treat you for those 3. If he doesn't trust the lab, he'll ask you to get those 3 tests done at a lab that he trusts. Right? So again, then the doctor referral comes in from that standpoint. So you have to understand that 70-80% of the industry is still doctor referred business. And you try and do this, right? So the way to do scuttlebutt on this as an investor, try to step into a lab and say, I want a HbA1c done. The next question he asks is, who's your doctor? That will be the question of the receptionist or the person you go and tell him, that you want a test done. Now, the moment you don't mention a doctor name, they will insist on one. If you still don't have a name, then they will put some name or they will leave it blank also. Sometimes they leave it blank also. But then that the reason why they ask for the doctor name is because they put the name on the report. And then the doctor knows, when you go to the doctor, he knows that this is a lab that knows my name and has it in the database and whatever. So there's a correlation done between the doctor and the lab at that point. So my understanding of the diagnostic business model is pretty much branded. Yeah. Uh, I have not seen doctors changing. So a doctor is very well, capable of having 3 trusted laboratories. He need not have only 1 trusted laboratory. So as a doctor, I may be able to trust Metropolis, Dr. Lal, Thyrocare, and let's say a next door pharmacy diagnostic called, let's say, Sunflower Diagnostic. Just a made up name. Let's say a Sunflower Diagnostic next to my door. I trust all these 4 laboratories. So as long as you get me a report of one of these 4, I'm okay and I'll treat you. But if you get me a Tata 1mg or a Reliance Netmeds, I may not be able to trust it. I may not be. I'm just saying. In which case, even if the parameter is out of the range, I'll ask you to get the test done again. Out of these, one of these 4 laboratories, I'll give you 4 choices. If you ask me for 4, if you ask me for 1 choice, I'll give you 1 choice. But I'll give you the names, and you'll have to get me the report from there before I treat you. So I'm just saying that, the investor. So today we live in an environment where information is too free flowing, and so is misinformation, by the way. And I think the investor community follows rhetoric a lot more than they follow data points. I'll give you a data point. 8 years, Healthians achieved 70 crore top line, 45 crore EBITDA loss. In 4 years, Pathkind Labs, which is Mankind Labs diagnostic arm, also achieved 70 crores top line and 45 crore PBT loss. So you can see that what the online platform was able to achieve after 8 years of operations, a traditional brick and mortar platform was able to achieve in 4 years of operations. So you can understand, if you want to look 10 years down the road, which one will be a more scaled up entity, unless something dramatically changes. So healthcare per se doesn't dramatically change. See, that is the nature of the beast, right? It doesn't change overnight. It is a trust game. It is a game with very high stakes. The stake is your life, your well-being. That's very, very high stakes, right? It doesn't change overnight. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
I think he's traveling.
Yeah,
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 sir.
yeah,
Sir,
yeah, yeah.
any follow-up question, Ravi, or shall I ask?
Yeah, one thing, since we are talking about doctor referral, I was reading that report which we were discussing earlier. Somewhere it is mentioned that the pharma companies will have a very strong hold over the doctor's referral part. That can be a reason for worry for these companies, or that is also we can ignore.
No, I think that is a valid worry. I think that is a valid worry, but you need to understand that 85% of the diagnostic market is still mom and pop stores, right? So let's say I am Pathkind Labs, and let's say you are SRL, right? Now, or let's say you're Dr. Lal. So because Pathkind is also north focused, and so is Dr. Lal. Both of them have origins in northern India. Now, Pathkind Labs, I have been 4 years in operation. You are Dr. Lal, you have been in operations for 25 years now. So every doctor in the northern part of India would know Dr. Lal for sure, right? And let's say I'm Pathkind. Now, even in northern India, 85% of the business is mom and pop stores, 15% of the business is organized. Let's say Dr. Lal holds 10% of the 15% business. So out of that 15% organized, 10% is Dr. Lal. I'm just making up numbers. I don't have these exact numbers, but these would be ballpark right numbers. Now, now if I'm Pathkind, should I be brave and warrior-like and open each and every collection center and lab right next to those of Dr. Lal? Is that a good strategy? Or should I open it next to the mom and pop stores and try and eat their business, which is the low hanging fruit, as I call it, or as we investors like to call it, low hanging fruit? Why will I battle a Dr. Lal in his home ground? What joy does it give me? It can only give me pain, no? I will go after the 85% unorganized players, no? So to answer your question, pharma companies have a reputation with the doctor. The brand is known to the doctor. It will be relatively easier for them to get the doctor to refer for a diagnostic test. But will they be brave or super brave and try to compete with the incumbent in that micro market? The answer is no. They will not be that brave, because it's not about brevity. It's about economic sense. It's a business. It's not a war. You will go after the unorganized place first. and 85% of the market is unorganized, there is enough space and room for the Dr. Lal and the Pathkind both to grow in the NCR region. Why would they battle head to head? They will not. See, even in Delhi, even if there are 40 labs that Dr. Lal has, that's only 40 pin codes, right? Delhi would have much more than 40 pin codes, right? I don't know how many pin codes they have, but they would have at least 200, 300 pin codes. So I will target the 250, 260 pin codes. They're not there. Na? Why will I target the 40 pin codes where Dr. Lal is there? You have to understand that diagnostic is a catchment area business. Let me give you an analogy, right? Let's say the biggest brand in shirts today is, let's say Peter England. I'm just again making up, but let's say it's Peter England, right? And let's say I'm a new player who makes shirts. Now, in my city, there are 300 pin codes. In those out of those 300 pin codes, 50 pin codes, Peter England has a EBO, an exclusive business outlet. Now, if I am looking to open EBOs, will I open EBOs in those 50 pin codes, or will I open EBOs in the other 250 pin codes where Peter England isn't there? सिंपल ना, मैं क्यों झगड़ूंगा यार? झगड़ा थोड़ी करना है, धंधा करना है. Does it make sense?
Right, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
So Sajal sir, Aditya sir, I was also reading some part of the report. So it was saying the competition is especially impacting the high margin routine test segment that drives a majority of EBITDA. And even the report says that going forward, the high competitive intensity could lead to ROC in the range of 20 to 25% from present 40-50%. So any views on this?
Sajal bhai, you want to go at this or should I take? Okay, I don't know if Sajal is facing some connectivity issues today. I think he has some connectivity challenges. So, okay, I'll take this. So, ROE standpoint now. So, let's say Dr. Lal's ROE, I think last reported ROE was 22%. But 30 or 40% of Dr. Lal's balance sheet is cash, no? So, if you take out the cash, the return on ROIC, what we call it, invested capital, that's like 40% plus, right? So ROIC, first of all, is very, very high for these companies. The ROE that you see includes a lot of component of cash because most of these diagnostic companies are net cash players. And see, their return on the cash balance that they have is 1.5 or 2%. And if that is 30% of their balance sheet, then anyways, the ROE is going to be extremely skewed. You can't go by that number, first of all. So that ROE number in the head is wrong, first of all. The ROIC of these companies are like 30, 35, 40% plus. Which tells you so no business will have this kind of ROICs unless there is a reason for the business to make that kind of ROICs, right? And that reason is the doctor network, essentially, the reputation, the trust. That is the reason why these ROICs exist in the first place, right? Now, coming to can these ROICs come down? I think they can taper down. Yes. So, but they will not taper down because of lower pricing players. It will taper down because these guys themselves want to make diagnostic more affordable, and they want to target more people. They get more volume. See, what Dr. Velumani said is very, very valid. It's all about capacity utilization here. See, you buy a 6 crore MRI, or you buy a 2 crore CT scanner, or you buy a 80 lakh rupee analyzer, blood analyzer, right? It all depends on for how many hours can you keep it working in a given day. So essentially, your ROIC will depend on the utilization of that scanner or the analyzer or the machine. Now, the running time will depend on the volumes that you're able to get. The volumes will depend on the catchment area, the pricing, the market share, etc. So all these players will do whatever in their capability to ensure that these things they can maximize, which is market share, volume, and therefore utilization, right? Because that is what will drive the margins and the ROE more specifically, even if not the margins. So ROE and margins are different. Huh? You can be a very high margin player with very low ROE. You can be a very low margin player with very high ROE. Classic example, DMart. Very low EBITDA margin, but very high ROE business. So from that standpoint, I think what the existing incumbents have realized is that diagnostic today has not been able to reach the masses. And that is what Dr. Avinash Ghalke was saying in his speech. He was saying that uh, pricing may not collapse, may not correct, may not fall, but price increases from this point may become a challenge. And I think that's a very valid point. It should become a challenge. It should become more affordable, specifically when the volumes can potentially explode. Given the post-COVID era, everybody has become more conscious and more worried about their mortality than we ever were in our lifetimes. And we have an aging population demographically, right? So we were the youngest population a few years back, and we probably still are. But we will be the country with the most old population few years down the road, right? So we will need a lot of diagnostic capacity, and these guys need to make it affordable. Unless that capacity won't be 100% utilized. So ROE गिरेगा क्या? That will depend on their ability to expand volumes. Pricing से अब ROE नहीं आएगा. अब जो ROE आना है वो volume से आएगा. So what is important is to see the ongoing trends in terms of the volume growth that these companies report in the coming quarters. My groundwork says there will be no slack in that, but we'll have to wait and see when these companies report.
Right. Sajal sir, same question if you would like to add to it.
So I sorry, completely missed the question. I had to drop off and then get back in. So what was the question? Sorry.
So basically, the competition is impacting the high margin routine test segment that drives the majority of EBITDA, and the high competitive intensity could halve the ROC to 20 to 25% from the recent 40-50%. So that was the question.
Yeah, no. So correct. So I agree with Aditya's view on the fact that it will be down to the operational efficiency, which is again a function of the volume. And I think Dr. Velumani also highlighted this point. He gave an example of very low pricing of some sort of tender, state floating the tender at a ridiculously low price, and investors may go crazy at looking at that price point. But it's not just the price in isolation, it's also the volume, because the more you sweat your asset, and majority of these labs are highly automated and they can handle a large volume of data, which also means that their fixed cost is also high. So volume is a big factor in this play, and I agree with Aditya on that front. The other observation that I've been thinking about is, so I take a lot of input from this narratives on Twitter chatter, and that's one of the reason I quietly follow many people, just to listen their thought process, and see what market in general is thinking. So there is a general tendency in the market that the number of players is directly proportional to the competitive intensity in perpetuity. I mean, market has this feeling of extrapolating near term sort of disruption into a sustainable future, and I can tell you that the only sustainable disruption is the one where the entire ecosystem is winning. If the company is not winning, so for example, let's say US generics, right? If there is a disruption, right, and the pharma companies are not winning currently, so they will start dropping out. Ultimately the equilibrium will come into play, and everyone would be happy. And likewise for any industry, and diagnostics is no exception. A disruption is not a disruption if you have a helicopter money and you go and start offering tests for free and people start taking it. I mean, the data could be anything, right? My sense is, rather than worrying about how many players are entering this space, because clearly the entry barriers are low. I mean, I could start my own diagnostic lab, Aditya could start his tomorrow, and we could be up and running if we have got private equity backing. If there is enough money to be burned, we could do that. So I don't think that's a good indicator to track in terms of the competitive intensity. The real indicator is how many of these new players have relationship with the doctors. See, when it comes to the branded healthcare, the prescription based healthcare in India or any market where it's a prescription based healthcare branded, doctor is the real moat. And if a company has got an existing relationship with the doctor, then that company has got, some that company could be a threat. So if JB or any Lupin as a good example, right, or maybe Mankind Pharma. So these two players, they have already got some sort of relationship with the doctor, and if they enter the diagnostic space, they could influence the doctor to give them volumes, and they could offer a more sustainable disruption, because these players, they know how to fight a bloody war. I mean, these players, they fight war every day in the US generics space. So they are very thick skinned, and they can just sit in there and make sure that the healthians of this world, they leave the turf. And because they have an existing relationship with the doctor, that is a more sustainable and a credible threat, in my humble opinion.
Right, sir. Ravi, you had raised your hand. Anything you want to ask?
Yeah, just a small follow-up. When we are talking about operational efficiency on the machine side, how does machines depreciate or will be replaced? It is because of technology improvement from the manufacturer side, where they will say that the new test done by the new machine will be more accurate and quicker. That will call for a replacement of the machine, or is there some amount of tests which decide that you need to replace the machine? I guess what I'm getting a sense that you can run innumerable amount of tests at least in 4 5 years in the machine, and there will not be any requirement for replacement. Is that thinking correct?
So machines are replaced, Ravi, only when the regulator says you need to replace them. If you are NABL accredited and you are CAP accredited or you are JCI accredited, and then they say that we will not approve your lab's accreditation unless you update the technology, the entrepreneur will not update the technology. It's not in his. So the machine doesn't malfunction after a number of tests or after a number of years. Okay, it keeps working fine because you get annual maintenance contracts and it's well maintained. The fact is that the technology gets obsolescent. If there is a new technology which comes in, it gets obsolescent. And if you need to get the new technology to get your, so NABL हो चाहे कोई भी accreditation हो, there is a periodic audit, and that periodic audit के बाद renewal कराना पड़ता है. ऐसा नहीं कि एक बार accredit हो गया उसके बाद कभी आके check नहीं करेंगे वो लोग. तो वो लोग जब आके check करेंगे and if they say कि we checked and you're currently running this old technology where this new is available and we will not give you the certification unless you take the new technology, that's when I buy the new machine. Unless that is done, I'm not buying the new machine. I'm using the old machine to death because my ROE is just better and better. So that's how it is, and it's a business. It's done that way.
Understood. Prince, you take over. I'll be on listen only mode.
Yeah. So there was one thing in the report, sir. There is a platform Flabo. So it was offering like book any test from any lab. So would this be any sort of disruption, or would it be a scalable thing?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that platform. By the name, are they like providing phlebotomists to just come and collect the sample and deliver it to the lab where you want it delivered? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Any lab or any test you can that is offering basically.
Okay, so it's an aggregator effectively, right? Um I don't know. I haven't thought of it. I haven't done any groundwork on this. But each of these labs have their own phlebotomists and they have their own standards for the phlebotomists. So I don't know if these labs will accept the samples that the phlebotomist will bring to them, because they will have to check. See, the lab will run the sample that it gets. Now, if the integrity of sample is compromised in any way, be it temperature, be it leakage, be it at the point of collection, be it during the transit, then the report will come out crap. And if the report is inaccurate, then it is the diagnostics company's neck, no? Uh, so I don't know how they plan to win the trust of the diagnostic labs to replace their phlebotomist with their own and then deliver the samples to them for testing. So I don't know what the track record of Flebo is, but I haven't studied it in detail. Um, but yeah, it seems like a difficult proposition, but also seems like an aggregator business. So if it's aggregator, then it doesn't bother me because end of the day, I'm getting to process the sample and I'm getting my piece of the pie.
Right, sir. So one more question. One second. So, do you think spending heavier on advertisement from incumbents like building brand like consumer companies, does this make sense for diagnostic companies?
नहीं ना यार, इसीलिए तो नहीं होता है. So you will see a few ads here and there about this Swasth packages and this Arogyam packages, but other than that, you don't see diagnostic companies spending on ad and promotion, na. And I gave you the reason. The reason is 70-20% business comes from doctor referral. So अगर doctor refer करेगा तो I will do my advertisement and promotion, but I'll do it to the doctor, na, because he is responsible for 70-80% of my revenue. The end consumer is only responsible for 20% of my revenue. वो भी वो annual health checkup का packages का responsibility है. So which is why, have you ever seen, so other than Tata 1mg, which is again was trying to display its prices more than display the test, other than these Tata 1mg advertisements, have you ever seen Therocare or Dr. Lal or Metropolis advertising that HbA1c हमारे यहाँ से कराइए? नहीं ना. या फिर CBC हमारे यहाँ से कराइए? नहीं ना. So there is a reason ना. HbA1c test और CBC test आपको डॉक्टर रेकमेंड करता है तभी कराते हो, आप अपने आप से नहीं कराते. And when the doctor recommends, he'll tell you from where to get it done. So then there is no point in advertising there. वो revenue तुमको आएगा ही नहीं उसका. So what will justify the ad spend? So the ad spend goes in the annual health checkup because there the patient chooses the lab first, and the doctor is the second layer where the patient goes to the doctor with the report if there is something wrong. If there's nothing wrong, then he doesn't go only to the doctor.
Exactly, and just to add, I mean, this is exactly the reason, कम से कम इंडिया में भी एंड मे बी अदर प्लेसेस एज वेल, जो अच्छा डॉक्टर है ना वो 100 की पीई पे चलता है, और जो इंजीनियर होता है ना वो 5-6 की पीई पे घूमता रहता है. फिर वो एमबीए करता है कि यार वैल्यू ऐड करता हूँ, थोड़ा अपना स्पेशलिटी वाला धंधा लेके आता हूँ, थोड़ा आम शाम की ना डिग्री लगाता हूँ, थोड़ा शायद कुछ मेरा हो जाए. बट वो डॉक्टर की पीई पे नहीं पहुंच पाता है कभी भी पूरी लाइफ में. देयर मे बी एक्सेप्शंस 1 or 2, बट इंजीनियर की पीई सिंगल डिजिट की ही रहती है, और डॉक्टर जो अच्छा डॉक्टर है उसकी 100 की पीई पे चलता है वो. दिस इज द रीजन. ये सारा इकोसिस्टम में जो मोट है ना, रियल मोट, वो डॉक्टर की है.
Right, sir. Right. So there was one statement in the report, sir. Influx of new competition post COVID outbreak is transforming industry value chain. So is this the reason of entry of multiple large players, or the space? मतलब, it got more lucrative after the COVID outbreak.
नहीं, the reason, so see, COVID outbreak के बाद lucrativeness बढ़ गई because people are more aware of their mortality. So diagnostic volumes will grow. That is one reason. The primary reason for new entrants is enough space for everybody. 85% of the market is unorganized. So people can see that. Those numbers are published in these consultant reports like McKinsey or PwC or whatever. So when you see that 15% of the organized chain is making 30-40% ROICs and 85% of the market is still unorganized, you will enter. You will enter. You will also want that 30-40% ROE, at some point. So that is the reason why people are coming. But that doesn't mean that you go and take the incumbent head on. That's foolish. Why would you do that?
Right, sir. There is one question. How do we see companies like Siemens recently started selling medical devices and software to HCG and Narayana Rudalya? earlier they used to sell only to Colombia, Asia.
So that
What?
speaks volume. That speaks volumes about the scale of our hospitals, na? So Siemens would not directly earlier not directly sell to a SVG or a Narayana because they were asking for lot sizes of 6-7 units. Whereas your Columbia Asia or whatever, the other international chains, they would ask for 100 units or 50 units of a given device. Siemens is not interested in selling 6-7 units, right? So they will say go to the wholesaler or go to the retailer and buy from there. I'm not going to sell you 6-7 units. Today, SCG Narayana have reached that scale where they can also buy 50 units. So now then they can buy 50 units, Siemens can sell to them directly. Now they can bargain directly with the OEM rather than going through the distributor channel. That's a function of scale.
Right, sir. And sir, one point like Dr. Moat is there, and there is one word of mouth. Like when we talk in our fraternity, and people ask about that lab and this lab. So obviously, word of mouth is also helping the brand thing, or maybe people have choices like the test results and efficacy are good at this and that lab. So that also helps with building customers. So any view on this side, or it's like I observed only?
Now, see, as I've been saying, this is a business of trust. So I, as a patient, need to trust the lab first, right? I, as a patient, doctor as a doctor needs to trust the lab and the report, right? So if someone I trust, which may be my father or my next door neighbor or my best friend, tells me that I went to this lab, the report, I like the experience and the report was really good. The doctor, treated me well with the report. If I see that he has the complete cycle and he has had a good experience, I may as well go to that lab. So mouth of word definitely चलता रहेगा, and definitely लोग पूछते होंगे यार कौन से लैब में टेस्ट कराऊं अगर कराना है तो, right? But again, 80% of the time the doctor will tell you. You will not ask your next door neighbor or your father की कहाँ जाना है. You will ask your doctor की कहाँ जाना है, right? So your doctor will tell you कि lab test कौन सा कराना है. But हाँ, वो annual health checkup वाला market completely different है. वो तुमको खुद डिसाइड करना है मोस्ट लाइकली. एंड अगेन, अगर तुमको तुम्हारे डॉक्टर ने पहले कभी किसी लैब में भेजा हुआ है, so let's say my doctor has earlier sent me to an SRL saying कि you go to SRL, get this test done, and I've been to SRL once and I have their app because वो app पे report आती है and SRL has my contact details and everything and it is next to my house, then I may not just have a choice. It's just a very intuitive decision to again go to SRL. That is where the brand loyalty comes in.
Right, sir. So, Sajal sir, there is one question. Seeing a lot of initiatives from listed players like Metropolis and Dr. Lal on genomics. So, any thoughts on this would be really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see that the pricing is coming down, and there is currently some sort of this curiosity stroke craze in people to go for their genomic sequencing and that type of thing. It's more kind of a curiosity based market at the moment, because see, again वही point है ना कि I can go to one lab and get the report out. What will I do with that report is where the game is. I mean, I can take that those readings and go to a pharmacy store and buy some medicine, for self without even consulting the doctor. That's one part of the equation. And if I take that report to the doctor and doctor says, this is not giving me any sort of uh, reliable data or information, I can't trust this information, you go to a specific lab. I mean, a doctor may be getting some commission for recommending that specific lab, that branded lab, right? That is always the case, especially in a country like India. I mean, lot of the prescription market, there is quote unquote facilitation, that doctor is the beneficiary. You like it or not. I mean, the companies will not openly accept it, but that is what the game is. So that's what the point is. This is all doctor driven ultimately. What will you do, if even if the cost is cheap, 100 रुपए का टेस्ट करा भी लोगे, फिर उसके बाद क्या करोगे उसका रिपोर्ट का? So price is secondary. I don't think price should not be part of your equation. At least as an investor and as a patient, price is the least important criteria for me.
Right, sir. Right. There is one more question. It's from Aditya, sir.
Actually, Prince, one thing on this, when I was thinking about this, I got this doubt. Uh, Something like, say, the guys who are offering the test at 100, 200, 300 bucks. If the tests are reliable, and they can convince doctor as well that their test is not anywhere like data is fudged or those sort of things is not happened. Uh, then what stop these companies in terms of tying up few doctors and getting that credibility which is missing what we are discussing right now? Or when they tread that path, the pricing would be completely different and would be normal to what the incumbent are charging.
Yeah, you answered your own question here. If you want to convince a doctor of your quality and everything, the kind of cost that you'll have to pile on to convince a doctor will not let you run the pricing you're running today.
Right, sir.
Exactly.
There,
And is the economics of scope, um, right? So economics of scope kya hai ki I'm already got an existing relationship with the doctor, um, and this is an add-on. So this is no incremental cost. The same person who is having this relationship, so he works for a company, a pharmaceutical company. He has an existing relationship with a bunch of doctors. The same person can promote the diagnostic lab of that pharmaceutical company. That's the economics of scope. Whereas if you are a standalone diagnostic player, then this is an additional expense for you. Maintaining a field force that can establish that relationship and maintain that relationship with the doctor. Big difference.
right, sir. There is one question like Krishna is giving low fixed salary to staff. Their variable salary component is high. So lab staff is supposed to procure more business and run the lab efficiently. How you see this business practice?
So, in any business, if the entrepreneur is able to run the business on a more variable cost structure versus sorry, if the entrepreneur is able to run the business on a more variable cost structure versus a fixed cost structure, then the entrepreneur is essentially protecting his margins, right? So he'll never get a very high operating leverage, but he will never have a very low EBITDA margin also because it's completely variable cost for him. So I think Krishna, because it's driven by government contracts where volume are supposed to be high and pricing is supposed to be discounted because it's a government contract and it's for the poor. um, what they are essentially trying to do is they're trying to protect their margins, and they're saying, look, we want to protect margins, and the way to protect margins is to shift your cost structure from a fixed cost structure to a variable cost structure. So if you see this low fixed salary and high variable, if you see earlier buying the machine but now talking about paying per scan to the provider of the machine, all these are shifts in strategy from a fixed cost structure to a variable cost structure. And that, to my mind, is a very sound corporate strategy because you are running a business where pricing is, by definition, going to be low because you are only doing government contracts. Or majority of Krishna's business is government contracts. So in that case, it just makes sense to hedge your bets and have a variable cost structure so that your margin is not too volatile. Because the government can give me a contract and can give me a volume commitment, but when I actually open the lab and if there are not enough patients or not enough tests, then I will bear the brunt of the mismatch in operating cost and operating revenue, right? The government is not going to help me there unless there are guarantees in the contract that we will make up for the price of the test which did not come through. But I don't think government is willing to give such guarantees. So therefore, it's always I should have an estimate as to how many tests we are going to do. But at the same time, if I see the risk of that estimate being missed or that estimate not being good enough, it's always logical for me to have a more variable cost structure.
Right, sir. There is one question from Chirag Chopra. He's asking, like, yeah, the diagnostic sector is going through sort of the same thing that telecom sector had gone through after Geo had entered. So, are there any chances that if the old companies sustain this competition for a while and everything will be all right?
Uh, Sajal, do you want to take this? I mean, the only thing I will say is कि
नहीं नहीं, मैं अभी बीच में हंस ही रहा हूँ मैं तो। क्वेश्चन सुन के मेरी हंसी छूट गई
नहीं
ऑनेस्टली।
नहीं, कोई बात
तो
नहीं.
ये
I
अभी
will
इतना
just
तो
say
हम
कि
लोग
I will
हाँ।
just say कि telecom में try था TRAI, and you should read about what TRAI did with the sector. Absolutely, oranges and apple का comparison
हाँ
है.
वही वही एग्जैक्टली।
So yeah, this is not. I don't think it's possible. As I said, and somebody posted on the chat on this messages. Somebody posted that chart from Credit Suisse report which compares prices. It's a very unreliable data point. Huh? I can tell you for a fact, I know one diagnostic lab that has, let's say, a CBC test in Mumbai at a pin code at 300 rupees, in Mumbai at another pin code at 500 rupees, that same test in Kolkata at 250 rupees, that same set a test in Delhi at 350 rupees. So ये जो prices compare कर रहा है क्रेडिट स्विस, ये किस पिन कोड के हैं, किस सिटी के हैं, किस डेट के हैं, वो they have just given the date. They have not given which pin code, which city, or is it national average. I don't think they have done the legwork. They must have just called labs and asked for prices, and जो भी एक particular lab में phone लग गया, उससे दाम पूछ लिया या उसका online price दिख गया होगा. They have just put that on the report. But pricing is not routine even in the same city. Forget about the country. Pricing for these labs in every pin code is different, depending on competitive intensity, GDP of the pin code, number of volume expected from that pin code, etc., etc., etc. So there is absolutely no sense in comparing pricing between different chains because you don't know what the pricing of a given chain is. Uh, Even Tata 1mg probably doesn't have the same price for Bangalore and Delhi. So go back and check that. They're not the same. So so the short response here is that ये TRAI ने जो telecom में किया, that was very very different than what any of these guys can do in diagnostics. Sajal bhai, your comments.
ना 100% सी अगेन वही सारा गेम डॉक्टर का है। अब जैसे मैं इंडिया में गया, आई had that experience, right? One of those two labs was ridiculously low price, but next time I visit India I will not even consider that because I've lost faith on the data. See, data is the key thing. And secondly, if my doctor is giving me an option that A, B, or C, and then if there is a massive differential in the pricing of A, B, and C, and all things being equal, then I will go for the lowest pricing one because I know I've got that assurance from my doctor that any of those three reports is will be deemed fit for purpose. Otherwise, this is all prescription stroke doctor controlled market. Doctor is the real moat in this whole ecosystem, and that's exactly the reason I said that a good quality doctor will always be commanding a higher PE multiple.
Right, sir. So there is one small last question, I guess. Unorganized players have always have an edge over organized players. How do you see this?
No, so we see it expanding here. I mean, that is why more organized players are entering because they've seen in the history organized players growing from like 2% market share, I think it was in 1990, to 15% market share today. And uh, the market share is shifting every year. So, and with more entrants, the shift will be faster now. So you feel sorry for the small-time entrepreneur who's running his lab. But that's the way India is evolving. We are moving towards organized retail from unorganized retail. GST, taxations, and all brand preferences of consumer. These are all trends which are making the unorganized obsolete. And that trend in this industry will also continue.
Right, sir. So, and sir, we are done with the questions. So, from audiences, we can take questions for last 5 minutes if any question is there. Otherwise, I will request Sajal sir and Aditya sir to say any closing remarks or maybe concluding remarks for the space.
Sure. So let's have any questions from audiences if there are, or else then I will maybe summarize.
Sajal sir, you have any question from Aditya sir?
अरे ये मत करो यार.
नहीं नहीं नहीं, मेरा 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 कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं. मेरे मेरे क्वेश्चन होंगे अगर कोई, तो आई हैव गॉट माय हॉटलाइन, आई कैन आस्क ऑफलाइन.
Right. So I think Aditya sir, we are done with the questions for today. So it would be great if we can conclude. And it was really nice of you to come on short notice and added value to our space. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, no. So I'll just say that we have had a good discussion, and the only thought I want to leave the participants with is this. Okay. So the challenges that we are talking about in diagnostic, there are twofold, right? I mean, whether these challenges exist or not, time will tell. My groundwork tells me that they don't exist today, but time will tell whether my groundwork is right or not, or whatever. We reserve the right to be wrong as investors always. But what are the challenges, right? The challenge one is on pricing. The challenge two is on maintaining or growing volume share, correct? For the organized players or the incumbents, call them what you want. So if you want to sidestep this, you can. So there are diagnostic labs listed which play with discounted pricing. Thyrocare obviously is one very obvious uh, example, but there are others which are actually placed on discounted pricing, who historically have cut prices and not increased prices, unlike the other larger chains who have actually increased prices. So you can sidestep the entire debate itself by investing in companies which are actually price discounters and incumbents at the same time. So instead of playing the very high risk game of a private equity player who is investing today in a very price discounted player and does not even have cash flow, does not even have profit before tax, um, you can actually buy the currently listed discounting players who are actually shown you scale, shown you execution, shown you a track record, positive ROE, positive cash flow, free cash flow, everything there, right? So you can completely sidestep the pricing conundrum by investing in discounted pricing players in diagnostics. Now let's come to volume. Now certain companies have volumes which are guaranteed by contracts. These contracts can be from private hospitals, government, whatever. So they will not have a volume challenge because these are guaranteed volumes. And then there are certain companies who just keep opening new labs in the hope that they will get volumes. Now, you can debate whether let's say, for example, a Dr. Lal, if he's entering into Mumbai with Suburban and his own name, will he be able to get market share in Mumbai or not in the presence of Tata 1mg or a Netmeds? You can debate. But if I have a government contract with the state of Maharashtra to operate these government hospitals in Maharashtra, or if I am in partnership with hospitals which are already existing, a Hinduja hospital or a Breach Candy in Mumbai, and they are just outsource their lab work to me, my volumes are pretty much guaranteed, right? So while I was very happy to be a part of this 2 hour long debate and discussion on diagnostic industry and the potential for disruption in pricing and volumes, the fact is, in my personal holdings, in the holdings in my fund, I am not taking either of these risks at all. I am buying those companies where the pricing is actually at a discount and they keep cutting prices every year. So they are actually discounting players. And I'm buying those companies which have a guaranteed volume. So those were my thoughts that I wanted to leave you guys with here. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we have one speaker, Chirag. You can quickly unmute and ask your question. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. So, sir, there was like one report in Mint as well as in the CS report that there are chances that RLS, Reliance Life Science, may enter the diagnostic sector. So, sir, how will this sector then pan out? I mean, Tata is there, Reliance will be also coming there, so all the heavyweights will be there.
So Reliance is already in pharma now. How is it working out for Sun and Dr. Reddy's? Have they lost everything to Reliance in pharma? Nahi na?
No,
Hai
sir.
na? They exist na?
Yes.
Haan. So just because Reliance है या just because Adani है या just because Tata है, not every business is their birthright, right? They have to do the legwork, the groundwork. They have to build the brand, right? So I think that's what my sense is. And there are many other businesses that these guys have started in the history. So इनका अपना history पढ़िए ना. So if you go through their own history, so Reliance has 3 big businesses, right? Do you know how many businesses they've actually done? To my count, more than 30. And 3 are scaled up. The other never scaled up. So there's a success rate for you. और मैं तो रिलायंस को 10 साल से ही देख रहा हूँ. The company is much older than that. तो पता नहीं और कितने चालू करके बंद कर दिए, वो तो मालूम ही नहीं मुझे. Correct? So that is one answer to that. The other part of the puzzle which I don't understand why investors can't understand. 85% market unorganized है ना, आने दो ना. Let them come, let them eat into that 85% ना. Why are investors worried that वो 85% market छोड़ के the new entrants will target the 15% organized market? You tell me what logical sense tells you. कॉमन सेंस तो होना चाहिए ना. अगर कोई बिजनेस चला रहा है, अगर कोई मल्टी बिलियनर है, उसमें कॉमन सेंस तो होगी ना. कोई भी इंकम्बेंट को क्यों चैलेंज करेगा जब इतना बड़ा टैम मार्केट है जहां आपके पास कोई चैलेंजर ही नहीं है. व्हाई विल यू चैलेंज द इंकम्बेंट? व्हाट इज द जॉय? So that is my response here, Chirag. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, sir. Definitely.
Sandeep sir, you have Sandeep sir.
Sorry, you're talking to me?
Yeah, sir. You have anything for us or any questions or maybe any inputs for today?
I only had one observation because I was listening to Aditya now. I think the Reliance Life Sciences Pharma business is not connected to the Reliance main entity. I believe it's a separate entity. But independent of that, I was today listening with a kind of enjoyment because frankly आज हमारे सेक्टर पे फोकस नहीं था, एलाइड सेक्टर पे फोकस था. And I was a bit surprised that neither the speakers nor the audience today raised the issue of the doctor lab nexus. हमारे फार्मा सेक्टर पे जिसको देखो रिपोर्टर इन्वेस्टर कस्टमर सब सब पत्थर मारते हैं राइटली और रॉन्गली. आई डोंट वांट टू गेट इनटू दैट. बट आज ऑलमोस्ट 1.5-2 घंटे से सब लोग अच्छी बातें कर रहे हैं. आई thoroughly enjoyed this session with Dr. Velumani giving out tips which as a person looking at the sector I had never understood. बट एक भी बंदे ने पत्थर नहीं मारा है कि डॉक्टर लैब से कमीशन लेता है बॉस. ये तो बड़ा सरप्राइजिंग है.
नहीं तो डॉक्टर क्वालिटी बिजनेस है ना, 100 की पी पे चल रहा है.
बिजनेस कोई भी हो सजल भाई, बट सी इफ यू लुक एट इट, अभी आप गूगल पे बैठो, डॉक्टर टेक्स कमीशन, ऐसी आप कुछ भी न्यूज आइटम के लिए सर्च करो 500 न्यूज हिट्स मिलेंगे. फार्मा के ऊपर प्राइसिंग के लिए आप देखो तो रिपोर्टर्स इतना कवर करते हैं, राइट. ईटी है, टीवी18 है, सब लोग फार्मा ड्रग प्राइसेस पे इतना कंट्रोल देख रहे हैं. बट डायग्नोस्टिक पे कुछ नहीं है ना, प्राइस कंट्रोल, ना क्वालिटी कंट्रोल, ना डॉक्टर लैब नेक्सस की बात, व्हाटएवर. आई डोंट नो.
संदीप भाई
मैं
संदीप
बताता
भाई
हूँ.
जलने की बू आ रही है, धुआं दिख
जस्ट
रहा है, जलने
डेफिनेटली
की
आ
बू
रही
आ
है
रही
भाई. मैं तो देखो पीछे हटता नहीं हूँ सच मानने से.
नहीं
लास्ट
नहीं,
टाइम मैं जब हंस रहा था
वेरी
मैंने
वेरी
मेरा स्पीकर ऑन रखा था.
नहीं, ग्रेट पॉइंट. जस्ट टू क्विकली ऐड, जो आपने बोला वो हो सकता है. मैं बताता हूँ कौन से सिनेरियो में हो सकता है. सारे सारे डॉक्टर्स को कंबाइन करके ना एक बॉडी बनाओ और उस बॉडी को लिस्ट करा दो और उसको बुलाओ हर 3 महीने में कॉल करने, अपनी ईपीएस दिखाने. तब मीडिया इंटरेस्टेड होगा कीचड़ उछालने में. कि मीडिया को चाहिए क्रेडिबल टारगेट. अभी डॉक्टर्स इतना फ्रेगमेंटेड मार्केट है, दे आर मिलियंस ऑफ डॉक्टर्स. उससे मीडिया को कुछ नहीं मिलेगा ना. तभी आएगा फिर ईटी नाउ वो. तो
That
तब
I
तब मजा
understand,
आएगा.
but also try to just look at a devil's day scenario. Abhi, in the last 3 years itself, all of us from the pharma sector have seen, for example, किस तरह से trade margin पे cancer drugs के लिए para 19 लाया था. Now again in the last 24 hours there have been articles on para 19 trade margin rationalization for other drugs. Diagnostics में any of you guys or Aditya has some view कि ऐसा doomsday scenario type suddenly price control ऐसा कुछ? I don't know. This sector is new to me.
नहीं, मैं आपको बताता हूँ, मैंने इस पे काम किया था बिकॉज आई थिंक 2018 में या 2017 में बहुत हवा चली थी कि डायग्नोस्टिक पे प्राइस कैप्स आएंगे।
Okay.
2014 में एनएलईएम आया था, 2014 में एनएलईएम वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड
Hmm.
एंड वो फार्मा ड्रग्स पे प्राइस का कैप्स आए थे, सो पीपल वर सेइंग कि डायग्नोस्टिक पे भी आने चाहिए, डायग्नोस्टिक पे भी आना चाहिए। तो उसका दो रीजन है कि क्यों नहीं आया। फर्स्ट रीजन, एज आई सेड, देयर इज नो एग्रीगेशन ऑफ डायग्नोस्टिक प्राइसेस। सो फार्मा का प्राइस कंट्रोल कैसे हुआ? A given pharma brand, for example, Crocin, right,
Hmm.
has the same price across India.
Yes.
A given diagnostic test, which is, let's
Hmm.
say, CBC,
Hmm.
from Dr. Lal,
Hmm.
will have 20 different prices within Mumbai.
This is surprising to me, Aditya. I never thought that ऐसा मतलब होगा.
सर,
This is
एक्सपीरियंस करके देखो, आप तो प्रभा देवी जाते हो ऑफिस।
yeah. I'll probably
हाँ
try it someday. कि मतलब
हाँ,
I
तो
would be
प्रभा
very
देवी में
surprised.
अप्रोच है नहीं सर, रियल एस्टेट ना। How are you surprised? How can I have? So I am a Dr. Lal, let's say, or let's say I'm a suburban for the ease of discussion,
Hmm.
right? So I have a lab in Prabhadevi,
Hmm.
right? A 200 square feet lab.
Hmm.
I have a 200 square feet lab in Borivali,
Hmm.
or let's say Nala Sopara,
Hmm.
right? My real estate cost is 8x, na? 8x or 10x in Prabhadevi versus Nala Sopara. How can I have the same price?
Aditya, then I'll admit this is my short-sightedness या whatever blinkered vision की हमने दवाई हमेशा, मैं 20 साल से धंधे में हूँ, दवाई एक भाव में पूरे देश में बेची है, या बिस्किट चॉकलेट खरीदते हैं पूरे देश में एक भाव पे। आई जेन्युइनली टिल टुडे व्हेन यू मेंशन्ड दिस, मुझे ये आज तक नहीं मालूम था कि एक सिटी के पिन कोड वाइज प्राइस डायग्नोस्टिक्स में चेंज होते हैं। व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज लॉजिकल, 8x of real estate price issue, but I never thought of it from that way.
नहीं
मतलब
नहीं, उसका
this
भी
is news
रीजन
to
है,
me.
उसका भी रीजन है। सी, डायग्नोस्टिक में रियल एस्टेट कॉस्ट और द रेंटल ऑफ द लैब
Hmm.
इज अ बिग कॉस्ट कंपोनेंट, फार्मा में नहीं है।
Fair point. Fair point. So I doff my hat to you on that. I was, when you were talking at that time, like around 20 minutes ago when you made that point, I was actually thinking कि Domino's के पिज्जा पे impact कर सकता है क्या, या hotels के लिए कैसे होता है, because chain hotels में we can still try to think of the same point.
हाँ, so
But
think of any industry where real estate is a big cost component. So hotel is a fair example, right? So Ginger Nasik will not have the same rental as Ginger Mumbai, no?
Exactly, that's the only thing that came to my mind कि ये वे चक्कर होता है रियल एस्टेट के हिसाब से। एंड आई थॉट कि मतलब कल परसों किसी दिन ट्राई मारते हैं कि कैसे होता है ये। दिस इज वेरी एक्साइटिंग टू मी। इट्स लाइक
हाँ
ट्यूबलाइट बल्ब मोमेंट फॉर मी और व्हाटएवर।
हाँ, so मतलब विद इन द सेम सिटी अलग है और डिफरेंट सिटीज में तो बहुत ही डिफरेंट है।
आई वाज जस्ट लुकिंग एट स्टैंडर्ड वो थायरोकेयर टाइप का मॉडल, वो आपको ऑनलाइन कूपन जनरेट होता है, यू पे दैट मच और व्हाटएवर। आई
हाँ,
दिस इज
so
न्यू
the
टू मी।
reason the reason is Thyrocare doesn't own the front end ना,
करेक्ट,
वो बैक एंड प्लेयर है, उसका रियल एस्टेट कॉस्ट ही नहीं है,
वो फ्रेंचाइज टाइप का मॉडल स्ट्रक्चर है।
वो डिवीज है, उसको फ्रंट एंड एमआर फोर्स मेंटेन ही नहीं करने का है।
And
तो
okay,
भाई,
and on one point, I slightly disagree with Sajal Bhai on this, because Sajal Bhai seemed to indicate, and maybe this is my incorrect understanding, he believes that the pharma players possibly have a lower cost because they have an MR force to talk to the doctors and whatever to get patients for the diagnostic segment. I am not sure if I see that as such a clear rosy future, huh, boss? I don't know. I'm not sure of if I believe that existing pharma company has a higher success probability in coming out of this storm in the next 2-3 years better than these new, or not new, but
अरे
non-pharma
एक
players.
सेकंड,
Sorry.
इवन इवन बिफोर सजल भाई रिस्पॉन्स, लोग तो बोल रहे हैं रिलायंस और टाटा का नमक खाते हैं लोग, इसलिए उसका डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट भी चलेगा, और आप बोल रहे हो जिसकी दवाई खाते हैं उसका भी डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट नहीं चलेगा।
See, Reliance, Aditya, I have slightly a different perspective, because Reliance tried to get big into diagnostics just before COVID. Then during COVID, what others do not, and maybe I can tell because this is kind of a slightly deeper reading. They went with some government institute in Jammu to scale up technology for COVID testing. Ye wo. You'll get those news items hidden in the second page, third page of Google. So Reliance was supposed to do something big in diagnostics. I also know they were trying to hire people, but then वो कहाँ fizzle out हुआ, I don't know. And then you just pointed out कि 3 versus 30 business of Reliance. So I support you there. We never know what Reliance will do, or whether even if it does, it's a guarantee for success. वो मुझे नहीं पता. But I knew of headhunters wanting to hire for Reliance Diagnostics, and I think incidentally that's a separate entity from the Reliance Life Sciences entity. हाँ, वो उसमें भी internally कुछ चक्कर था.
No, doesn't matter whether it's a separate entity. You tell me one thing: has Reliance Life Sciences got a field force? MRs हैं क्या उनके? Have they got the last mile connectivity? If the
नहीं
answer is
सजल भाई,
yes,
आई एम टेलिंग यू ना, रिलायंस आरएलएस को आप बेस रिलायंस एंटिटी से कभी कंपेयर ही मत करो, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट इवन हेल्ड बाय आरआईएल शेयर होल्डर्स. आरएलएस इज अ
no, it
प्राइवेट
doesn't matter.
एंटिटी.
Doesn't matter. Say Adani. Let's forget
हाँ,
Reliance. Let's talk about Adani. If Adani tomorrow starts a pharmaceutical company, only manufacturing pharmaceutical company and not directly having any relationship with the doctors, then Adani has got no
no
bargain
control.
or real moat in my
नहीं,
view.
then I wouldn't be worried about it. Then there I would support Aditya's point कि boss Sun Pharma को क्या फर्क पड़ जाएगा, as an example. So yes, a company which in India today, looking at the domestic market, does not have a front end field force, they'll not be able to really move the needle for anybody else. See,
Exactly.
this market today is still MR dominated, at least for the immediate near future. I don't know 10 years down the line, but immediate near future mein an MR is a prerequisite. And there I agree कि a bigger player, I don't know, but this area is very interesting. But I stick to my point that I am not a big believer necessarily that if you are a big pharma company, then you will have a higher probability of success in the allied business of diagnostics. So
The point.
You will see that there is another point. Okay, there is one economies of scope that I mentioned. There is
हाँ,
another reason that you have got a core business which is throwing cash,
वो
right? And
अलग
you
बात
can
है. देखो, तो
you
throwing
can
कैश वाली
sustain.
बात तो
You
पैसा
can
उड़ाने
so
वाली
you
बात हो
can
गई.
sustain, right? Whereas a PE funded helicopter money funded player without any running cash flow engine is only on an oxygen cylinder. जब सिलेंडर की ऑक्सीजन खत्म हो जाएगी तो वो मर जाएगा.
That I agree, but see, there are right now, if I off the top of my mind, we've got two, right? Lupin and Mankind, right?
They could be
Which
more. See, if it is an 80-85% unorganized market, and if the other domestic pharma company having MR presence, they are not entering this field, perhaps they should be.
perhaps there should be, or
Rather
there
than
must be
rather
some
than
merit.
rather than money burning money in US generics and running on that ANDA treadmill, you better try the domestic diagnostic market. You may get a better ROE 5 years down and more sustainable ROE.
See, this when you said this around 20 minutes ago ना, मैं उस वक्त मेरा immediately previous employer के बारे में सोच रहा था. Private company, 3,000 plus crore top line, solid cash with the family, and they only specialize on cardiology and hypertension, 2-3 segments. They are not like the Sun Ciplas की हर चीज बेचना है. Very focused. So I'm talking of USP Private Limited. So for them, in fact, जो अभी आप कह रहे हो, there is a point that okay, if you have got घर का cash and you've got focused business and MRs focusing on only a segment of doctors where tests etc. are very specific or repetitive, maybe yes, there is an economy of scope. But I don't know whether it will work for Lupin or Mankind or what. I don't know. For me, the diagnostic space today is very unclear.
Well, Lupin has promised Aditya on one of the earnings calls that we will show you some bigger traction and scale up next year. So I don't remember exactly which call, but I think maybe couple of quarters earlier when they floated this, right? Maybe the Feb 22 call, if I remember. So Nilesh was answering your question, Aditya, if I remember correctly, and he said that we have just started, and maybe a year later or next year we should be able to give you some better numbers, but we would be reporting this separately anyway, so you will see the traction.
Yeah,
सजल भाई देखो,
elephantine memory है
recorded
सजल भाई
call
का.
है और ऊपर से listed company है. I come from a competitor. Otherwise, Lupin के ऊपर तो बात offline बहुत हो सकती है. Let's
No,
नहीं नहीं, which is
I
fair.
will get in
नहीं
touch.
नहीं नहीं, मेरा मेरा दूसरा पॉइंट था। मेरा पॉइंट
हाँ,
ये था, ये बता, लुपिन का एग्जांपल लेने का। नहीं, लुपिन का नहीं, मैंने तो लुपिन का एग्जांपल लिया ही नहीं, मैंने पाथकाइंड का
करेक्ट,
एग्जांपल लिया था। हाँ,
यस।
so I wanted to show that Pathkind, which started in 2017-18, has achieved in 4 years what Healthians as a discounted online platform took 8 years to achieve. That was
So
my point.
that thing
Both of them.
that I understood, but I'm looking at this dehors or excluding healthians. For me, healthians was not a data point. I was just looking at कि मैं इतने time से हूँ, and if you see that ways, right? I remember some years ago, Sun Pharma family had invested money in, I think, what, one of the windmill companies or whatever. तो इन्होंने
Yes.
पैसा तो सही जगह, कई जगह, not सही, कई जगह पे लगाया है. But none of the pharma companies still fairly recently have gone into the diagnostic space, and where Sajal Bhai was very clear that there is an economy of scope, not
Yeah.
necessarily scale. And I was trying
Yeah.
to think, यार मेरे को भी इतने साल हो गए, मैंने कभी जाइडस में या किसी कंपनी में सुना नहीं ओनर फैमिली को कि चलो करते हैं ये. I don't know whether it was my lack of knowledge या whether the owners have been busy
नहीं, but
trying to go on the
संदीप
ANDA
भाई,
cycle.
just to add there, so economies of scope अगर आपको देखना है कैसे यूटिलाइज किया है किसी कंपनी ने, जाइडस कैडिला इज अ गुड केस स्टडी ना. सो फार्मा, वेलनेस, न्यूट्रिशन, एनिमल हेल्थ, सभी तो किया ना उसने.
अरे बॉस,
So,
पैसा किसमें बना रहे हैं वो?
नहीं नहीं, बट सी
हाइंस का कितना,
दैट इज
4-4.5
एग्जीक्यूशन.
हजार करोड़ डाला उसमें.
नहीं नहीं, एक सेकेंड. सो आप एग्जीक्यूशन पे जा रहे हो, मैं
हाँ,
इकोनॉमीज ऑफ
करेक्ट,
स्कोप पे,
यस, अपॉलजीज.
मैं इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्कोप पे जा रहा हूँ.
हाँ,
So they are one example where they have well utilized the economies of scope. Agreed, they also did not go into diagnostics. Pathkind was the first to go into diagnostics. Lupin has been the second. My sense is there will be more, but these more or not will depend on how maybe Pathkind and Lupin fare over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So, see the point that Sajal is making, and that I also make several times. These pharma companies are conglomerates. They have one cash generating engine and they have
yes,
one cash burning engine.
yes,
अभी वो कैश जनरेटिंग इंजन से पैसा बना के कैश बर्निंग में डालने का टाइम मेरे हिसाब से हो गया खत्म. They have
correct,
overdone it. They have overdone it. They cannot do it anymore. Or they should
yes,
not do it anymore. करने को तो कर सकते हैं. They all have majority stake in their own companies.
correct.
करने को कर सकते हैं, बट मेरे हिसाब से वो खत्म हो गया टाइम, बिकॉज अब इन्वेस्टर्स इनको क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं, पहले करते नहीं थे. ठीक है. नाउ अगर अब तो उनके पास दो ऑप्शन है. इफ दे कांट, if they won't burn more cash in the US generic treadmill, they have only two options. Option one, return the cash to shareholder as dividends, which they could have done in the first place. But because वो mentality नहीं है, mentality is to grow and scale and build more verticals. Then the second option is to pump it into a vertical where there is eventually a future. Right? Now that could be animal healthcare, that could be wellness, that could be OTC, that could be diagnostics, that could be hospitals for all you know. I won't be
Zydus has
surprised.
also entered hospitals on a
हाँ, Zydus
smaller
का भी
scale.
hospital है, correct?
Yeah, but it is
So
there, fairly well run. Not just hospital for that matter, huh? Teaching also. They
teaching
have
भी है.
medical college attached to that hospital.
Yes,
At
I
least
know
the
that.
Ahmedabad one.
I know that, yeah. So I'm saying कि economies of scope तो evident है ना अपने सामने. Zydus Cadila is a one very public example of economies of scope there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very,
and
very
see,
informative session, man. Very informative.
the other, just to add, the other reason that these guys, the pharma, the giants of India, they have got this tendency of this empire building. And
Correct.
what is the empire? There is 6,000 crore sales coming from India and 16,000 crores coming from outside India. Of that 16,000, 10 to 12,000 is coming from US generics. Now, even if they know that they are losing money, which they are, and they are bleeding, and they should be exiting that business, they don't want to, because it's the top line. Is the mentality of मैं बड़ा दिखूं. I mean, there are examples. If they shut down their loss-making businesses, their share price would hit 20% upper circuit the next day. But they are not doing it because they want the bigger empire, which is ridiculous thinking.
Definitely. See, as Aditya just mentioned, majority holding hai families ki, they have a different perspective vis-a-vis just not looking at the best financial engineering in terms of the return on money. These are two different tasks, that, or asks rather. I completely agree with that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because everybody now, for example, is, if you look at the newspapers in the last 2-3 weeks, there have been ET articles, etc., which specifically talk of focus being back on domestic pharma, away from the US, Europe side. And then we now see, today we are speaking of diagnostics, and then seeing companies looking at it. Very, very bright, to nahi, but very, very interesting days ahead, I would say. COVID is off.
And Sajal bhai, not next day 20% upper circuit, next few days of 20% upper circuit.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So I was just trying to
Just kidding.
hint
Just
upon,
joking.
hint upon the massive, because वही ना जो आपने कई बार समझाया भी है, वो लॉस को मल्टीपल दे रहा है स्ट्रीट. तो जो ब्लेंडेड मार्जिन है, जो ब्लेंडेड ROE ROC है, दैट इज नॉट गिविंग यू द ट्रू पिक्चर. और वो लॉस मेकिंग धंधा आपका लॉस मेकिंग ही रहेगा, बिकॉज आप ट्रेडमिल से उतरने वाले नहीं हो. आप अंडे अंडे करते जाओगे, वो अंडे फूटते जाएंगे, आप और अंडे पैदा करते जाओगे, फिर US FDA आ जाएगा. तो वही है ना, वो अगर किसी ने जॉली LLB 2 देखी हो, तो उसमें एक डायलॉग था ना, अक्षय से 2 गुंडे आते हैं मोटरसाइकिल पे, कहते हैं सीतापुर का चॉकलेट खाए हो. तो ये जो US FDA है ना, ये सीतापुर का चॉकलेट खिलाता है इन सबको.
That business, though, I think clearly everybody who's today tuned on to this, they have a certain level of pharma knowledge available, and obviously people like you or Aditya come with a very different level of knowledge. But I think the days of big time talk of US, Europe is gone. मुझे तो हंसी आती है जब वापस लोग चाइना जाने की बात करते हैं. I don't want to name a company, but last 6 weeks में we've seen again one Indian company enter China the third time or what, fourth time or whatever, and
Fifth time.
fifth time. So Aditya already knows what I'm referring to, and he's on target. So I don't know. See, pharma today looks complicated already. Diagnostics is, for me, I'm a novice there, and you guys are trying to look at the numbers, and it's going to be interesting from here. Are we as a culture going to get more diagnostic tests? That's the only positive indicator, I think, which Aditya also alluded to earlier, that yes, as a culture हम आज young हैं, कल old होंगे, we will be needing more tests. But
नहीं, and government push, संदीप भाई, ये जो गवर्नमेंट टेंडर्स है पहले नहीं होते थे.
मुझे वो पार्ट समझा ही नहीं कि मतलब ये चक्कर कैसा है. I am, because I
नहीं, so
unfortunately I've
it's a
never
make, it's a make versus buy. So earlier the government hospital used to run an in-house laboratory, obviously inefficiently run, corruption rate, no result, no test, no technician, right?
Correct.
Now उसका outsourcing चालू हो गया है, which is a public-private partnership essentially. And वहाँ पे, because see, requirement, demand तो हमेशा थी ना, requirement was always there. Supply नहीं था, because वो inefficient था. तो अब वो recognition from the government की inefficient है, step 1, huge step. Step 2, outsourcing it to a private player, huge step. Step 3, continue to outsource more. Outsource the damn hospital itself, because ये आपने लैब का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व किया, अभी तो हॉस्पिटल का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना बाकी है.
Interesting.
That is where you see these hospital chains like Narayana, Max, Aster, even SCG talking about O&M contracts, operating and maintenance contracts. So they are pitching to government bodies, and they are pitching to other standalone nursing homes also, that look, I know you run a hospital, I know it is inefficiently run, I know you don't make much money or no money, give it to me, I'll ensure you make certain money, and whatever I make on top of that is mine.
Interesting.
तो ये बहुत अच्छा ट्रेंड है. This is, see, we have deficient infrastructure than what we are supposed to have.
Oh, that I agree. Across the
irony
board.
Is, the irony is, despite deficient infrastructure, the operation is also, inefficient. So
that
that's a
also
double
I
whammy.
agree. That जितना
So
है
that's
वो
a
भी
double
efficiently
whammy.
नहीं run होता है. That also
exactly.
I agree.
So ये public-private partnership is addressing that efficiency, which is step 1. The overall infrastructure is step 2, because that is capital intensive.
So, Aditya sir, Sajal sir, we have one speaker. So, shall we take one last question?
Yeah, I'll go on mute. Thank you so much for this very impromptu conversation between so many people listening to us and you giving me time. I'll switch off to mute. Switch to mute.
Go ahead, Praveen. Prince, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nishant, you can unmute and ask your question. Nishant, you can unmute and ask a quick question. Okay, never mind. He must not be hearing us. So, Sajal sir, we are concluding. So, anything you want to say as a closing remarks?
No, my only remarks is that I'm still a student, and I'm learning a lot, especially about this diagnostic sector, because I've only started tracking it literally around 2016-17, and I was never comfortable with the valuations of these listed players. I mean, um, 14 times, 15 times price to sales multiple. Do you know what it actually means? It means that the business is gonna stay at a high operating margins and high free cash flow over 20-30 years. That's what a 15x price to sales multiple tells us. And when I find, and this is not specific to diagnostics company, I see this multiple being given to lot of unbranded generic B2B chemical companies. And I have never been comfortable with any of these chemical companies getting anything near those kind of valuations. And even today, I mean, there are many companies in chemicals space who are offering generic chemicals, unbranded B2B. They are getting 20x or thereabout price to sales. This is ridiculous. This is madness. So, you know, पैसा ना बने कोई बात नहीं है. इंडेक्स में एसआईपी कर लो यार. Except that you are a big idiot, you don't understand anything about the valuations. किसी ने भी कुछ बोला हो, अभी अनसीन वैल्यू ने भी अगर कोई लिस्ट निकाल दी 11 की, डू नॉट इन्वेस्ट, उसमें कोई डिस्क्लेमर है, सिर्फ उसी डिस्क्लेमर को ही दिन में 3 बार पढ़ोगे तो ज्यादा समझ में आएगा. People are asking me all sorts of questions on those specific stocks. I mean, this is madness. I've clearly written that go for index investing. It is incredibly difficult because index is managed. वो रिग होता है इंडेक्स, इसलिए वो बीट नहीं कर सकते हो इजीली उसको. तो बट डू एसआईपी, अदरवाइज इन्फ्लेशन विल फिनिश योर फ्यूचर. सो डू इंडेक्स एसआईपी. एफडी में मत रखो पैसा. गोल्ड एज एन इंश्योरेंस इज फाइन, 2-4-5%. Have life insurance policy, have a broad asset allocation. एक रियल एस्टेट भी होनी चाहिए जिसमें आप किस घर में रह रहे हो, बट 5 घर रखोगे, उनकी मेंटेन करते करते तुम्हारी कमर टूट जाएगी. सो इंडेक्स इन्वेस्टिंग एज एन एसआईपी एवरी मंथ. एंड इफ सी 100 रुपए से एसआईपी कर रहे हो, अगर भाव आधा हो गया, तुमको यूनिट डबल मिल रहे हैं ना. दिक्कत क्या है? तुम कल रिटायर हो रहे हो क्या? इफ यू आर रिटायरिंग 20-30-10 years hence, then continue with the SIP and pray. रोज फास्टिंग करो, व्रत रखो, शंकर भगवान से दुआ मांगो कि मार्केट क्रैश हो जाए, जिससे कि मेरी यूनिट्स जो है ना, वो सेम मनी, मेरी मनी की बाइंग पावर, डॉलर कॉस्ट एवरेजिंग, सिंपल. प्राइस भाग रहा है तो सब लोग उछलने लगते हैं, पार्टी होने लगती है, कूदने लगते हैं. ये भाव जब गिरे तो पार्टी करो, रसगुल्ले बांटो कि मार्केट जो है ना, निफ्टी आधा हो गया. खुशी मनाओ, ढोल पीटो, क्योंकि तुम तो रिटायर नहीं हो रहे हो ना कल. सेम अमाउंट ऑफ मनी विल नाउ बी बाइंग 2x. सो रिजॉइस दैट. सो वही, कॉमन सेंस इज द ओनली थिंग दैट यू नीड टू लर्न. कुछ और सीखने की जरूरत नहीं है, एनुअल रिपोर्ट पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. If you are not getting any common sense after being on Twitter for 2-3 years and following so many people, and you are still asking for stock tips, then switch off from Twitter and just do dumb investing, which is index investing. You will be happier. You will sleep well. That's all.
And you'll also probably not lose money.
You will definitely not lose money in SIP mode over 30 years. That I can guarantee. That I can guarantee. Even if you start your SIP today in index, I'm talking about Nifty or whatever, and if you do it for 30 years uninterrupted, you will beat inflation handsomely.
ठीक है. On that note, let's conclude. Praveen, Prince, sorry.
Yeah, sir. Right, sir.
Okay,
So,
thanks, guys. Thanks for the
thank you
time.
so much
Thank
for your
you.
time, sir. It was really nice having you all again and again. So it was very informative. And guys, those who are attending and who joined late, they can check with the recording. And please, any names if taken during the conversation were pure illustrations. So do not construe any wise or recommendation from that. Keep it as educational thing only. Yeah.
Yeah, my disclaimer also, sorry, at the end of this is that any names that I took or views that I expressed are my personal opinions and views. You should assume they're biased. You should assume I have vested interest in all the stocks that I discussed, and these are not my house views. I am a SEBI registered portfolio manager. Our house offers a SEBI registered portfolio product. So please consult a financial advisor before buying, selling, or doing any kind of investing.
Thank you, Sajal sir. Thank you, Aditya sir. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, audiences, for keeping for so long. And we'll connect soon again. So thank you so much. Good night.